computer. Never. Cool. All right, we are recording. I'll make sure to get you this video, but we'll have to upload it somewhere other way because it's gonna be a big
Edit
file.
it first and
Okay, we just said, okay, so
pre-consent forever.
Yeah, we're
uploading.
recording, but nothing is going to be shared until explicitly, you guys agree to it. Right now, I just want to consider this private.
yeah, so I just get some history. So John's done a bunch of different experiments, and some of them were pretty intense with the free energy. I'm talking about the box with the neodymium and all that stuff. And yeah, okay, so from all the ones that he worked on, the type that is easiest to understand and easiest to replicate is the crystal power cell. And shit, how long have we been together? 12 years or so?
Been together 12 years, young lady.
So, a lot of my life has been building power cells.
Yeah.
And moving us and going all over the place, but in between making power cells. And in fact, there was, we were in Minnesota, and before going to the Gulf of Mexico, during the BP oil disaster, I had made some, and I had just taken John's compound and soaked some pumice rock, just kind of like the rock that you put around landscaping rock. And I put a couple of screws in it, and I got power off of it.
Off a rock, hey? That's awesome.
Question for you on that cell. I got a nice piece of calcite crystal, quartz crystal.
Right.
How would that work in the cell? This,
Well,
they say it's
Well, here, let me kind of just explain what's happening. So in metals, you have electromotive potential, and you have the negative ones that are like lithium. What else is on that end?
Alkaline metals, lithium, calcium, sodium, potassium.
Yeah,
Cesium, I believe.
yeah, but aluminum's on the negative side.
Yeah, aluminum.
Okay, and then on the positive side of the electromotive, I mean, I've got the whole chart on it, and you start off with gold and you work your way silver and copper and blah, blah, blah. Okay, and magnesium's in there somewhere. What did I put magnesium with?
Mg.
Yeah, magnesium. Anyway, so when you have these two metals, one has a positive and one has a negative, and you put this compound that's piezio, and you put it between the two metals, that crystal, that piezio, is going to pick up the differentiation in the potentials, the voltage potentials. So right, so right, but that's what a Rochelle salt is. It's a piezio, and so when that's the whole, you can be a molecule thick as long as those metals aren't touching, and you're going to be able to pick up the energy that is the differentiation between the positive and the negatives. So that's your voltage on any of these cells. Your amperage is by the surface areas. So, I mean, I worked on this stuff. I got it done. My brother died. I got all of his breadboards and pins and shit from, he was building circuit boards, and I was getting a volt off of these suckers, just a pin in the circuit board. So I worked on miniaturizing it. I also developed, I didn't develop shit. I just copied an old recipe for saltwater taffy. Saltwater taffy is sugar and cream of tartar. Rochelle salts is cream of tartar and baking soda. And that's what we basically ate 100 years ago in all of our breads before we got into the yeasted Wonder breads. So we were actually eating the Rochelle salts. Think about that when we talk about our systems and what this actually is.
Yeah, bioorganic piezoelectrics.
Right. And so the what I did was I added sugar in to retard, it's just a little bit that I started with using sugar to retard the hardening of the crystal, because we were taking these power cells and we were doping them with magnetite. And the magnetite came off the beach over at Gold Beach, and we then mixed it in with the Rochelle salt compound, and we recorded the frequencies that we use to eliminate the radioactive contamination into the crystal. And then that power cell then was the power source to drive the transmission when we hooked it up to trees, evergreen trees, an old ham radio trick. So we have our system here of eliminating the radioactive contamination, but it's actually quantumly entangled with all the other crystal, we call them Johnny tubes, that got installed across the US.
I love that name, by the way. I have to say that's such a great name, Johnny Tubes. Oh, that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, well, originally they were spherical, so they're, whoa, that was you pulling on this, honey. So wait a second.
Yeah.
Let's get this off of here.
Nancy, I'm taking notes, Nancy.
Okay, good. Okay, he actually has a pen, isn't that great?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll
so
write it, yeah.
he's no longer digital, he's analog. Okay.
Dialogue by analog.
He's
I've got
analog.
analog notes for this one too. We'll get to those questions later, but go on.
I don't know how to stop this phone, so I'm just gonna put it out of the room. Yeah, and I'm supposed to get one of those smartphones. Yeah, right. Okay, so,
I graduated to wireless at the 1940s, 50s.
oh yeah, okay.
Walkie-talkie, vacuum tubes.
Yeah, well,
I
John's
gotta stare at it.
John's used a spectrum analyzer to listen to drop in on people's cell phone calls too.
Oh, yeah.
So,
well, that's interesting.
Yeah, but okay, back to, where were we?
So you're talking about power cells.
Talking about power cells, I'm talking about the sugar. Okay, so,
Yeah.
and the Johnny tubes, so that's what we did with the Johnny tubes.
Johnny
Originally,
tubes.
they're gonna be in balls, so they're gonna be Johnny balls, but
Johnny balls?
right. And that kind of goes along with what I was talking to you about, is when these power cells are made in a sphere, we're getting the AC and DC off of it at the same time. But the Johnny tubes were also doing that when we hit them with the radio frequencies when they were doped with the magnetite.
Yeah.
So it gets AC and DC off of them.
Well,
So,
that was quite a conversation.
okay, so now, so now I've added more sugar to the mixture. And so I've made it like a taffy, and it stays pliable for months. And if you take it and dip it like in Plasti Dip, if you dip the cell in a Plasti Dip, and so there isn't any water evaporation coming off of that taffy, and it's totally enclosed in there, then it stays pliable, just within the Plasti Dip.
Yeah.
The other thing about these is that these crystals continue to grow. Once, if you make them, if you've noticed that, how they just kind of start growing up and spilling out of the tops and bottoms of these cells, that's another reason to put the dip them in Plasti Dip, is because then it contains them, and it contains that pressure that the energy is, like pushing, like you got this cell in between there. You've got,
Epoxy resin sort of thing that you seal it in, essentially.
what Plasti Dip is? You go down to the hardware store asking for some Plasti Dip, and you can like dip the bottoms of your screwdriver or your pliers in it, so it's got a good little grippy on it. Well, you can dip the whole cell in that, and it seals it completely.
Like a liquid rubber that dries.
Yeah. Actually, an old client of mine, for when I had an ad agency, so I've known about them. A lot of people don't.
Oh,
So,
sorry. Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, you guys probably have seen this brand. This is a spray on, which works really, really well. And the plastic dip is obviously a lot thicker. It's a better product, but basically they're the same product. This one's just got a
Right.
solvent in it to make it.
right,
Yeah, this stuff
right.
works great for high voltage, and it works great for water sealing. And now there's even another option. It's a spray on rubber designed to seal like a leaky gutter or, you know, some hole in a container or something like that. You can use it to repair boats. That stuff really seals the moisture real well. So that's
Right.
another option.
So, I mean, these are
Yeah, good
just,
stuff.
okay, so these are just some little things, you know, I brought it down to a gold pin that you can put into a circuit board. What I was explaining to Ben was, this is the way life operates. You know, when John was talking about the different metals, sodium and potassium and all that kind of stuff, we think those are minerals, but they're metals. And our blood is just a little bit salty, you know, I'm sure, you know, you don't have to be a vampire to know that. You know, you've had a bloody nose or sucked your finger when you banged it with a hammer or something, you know that your blood is a little bit salty. And so that little bit of salty is what's moving in between these metals in your blood, and that is how life actually operates. And one of the things about these power cells, I don't know if other people actually do, some people have contacted us, is that when you put them in series, they only go to about 5 or 6. So I can have, you know, 0.75 volts, and then I have 1.5 volts, and I have 2.25 volts, and I get, you know, 3 volts, and some, I can get up around, you know, 5 or 6 of those on my series, and then it goes back down to, you know, 1.1. Why are we big on the screen? Are you guys?
Oh, sorry. I was going to spotlight it because you guys are obviously the stars of the call. So I figured I don't know if they showed on full screen or what the recording looks like, but I can remove it if it's a little too much.
Yeah, it's really scary. So
Okay,
anyway,
I'm going to stop doing that. Then let me remove this.
we're gonna move,
Okay.
outside of this. We're gonna move outside the camera and do that shit.
Oh, that's okay.
So
I
anyway,
could care.
but if you put it in a star pattern, you can get up to about 10 or 12 of them. So
Really?
there's something
That's
about
fascinating. So
these-
you're connecting in series in a star pattern, it won't short out as soon, and you're able to get more voltage out of this.
yeah, and there's other little tricks, like, you know, you gang them up in series, and then you hit them with a bang of voltage, you know, like 6 volts or something like that, and it runs right along the line and it holds them together. And as long as you keep drawing power off of those 12, you're going to be okay. But if you don't draw the power off, they go back and say, we're only going to go to 5. So I mean, but I'm thinking if we had this, what I was explaining to Ben is, you know, there's a time when typewriters were a really big deal. And then they had electric typewriters. And then they had these, you know, electric typewriters that had a little ball on it, they'd spin around, okay? And then they had this little LED screen that was on the electric typewriter so that you can see what you just typed before you hit the return button, and you can go back and fix the shit so you don't have to use the whiteout.
I remember those. I think we used to have one. I think it was made by a brother, perhaps.
Yeah, I had one. It was like 800 fucking bucks, you know, and that back in the day, that was a lot of money. And you turn around, and they turn around the next year, and PCs were out, and you know the whole thing was, it was a transitional technology that when the PCs hit, nobody wanted to have that little screen, you know, they could see it
It was
all.
obsolete at that point, but right before that, it was the highest possible technological of that generation, and then instantly became obsolete once the computer came out, sort of thing.
Right. Okay, so the power cells in these little cylinders, putting them on a circuit board, finally figuring out how to get their energy off, load them up on capacitors and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's very feasible to have something that's 10 inches, 10 inches, 10 inches, and have 10 million volts in there very easily at pico amps, but when you convert it, you get enough power to run a house. Yes, but that's the typewriter with the digital screen on it. And what we really need to look at is that this is how life functions. And I mean, even if it's as simple as making a bunch of these miniature cells and figuring out different kinds of gelatis or you know, maybe something that that'll dampen the field, because I think it's a magnetic field that gets created by the cells, and so they can only hold that field, and then it drops off. You know, when they're going in series. So there might be some type of a compound to put them in, and we literally have like these bioenergy bag things. Okay, somebody left. Are we alone again? Are we alone?
Oh, there he is.
Okay.
Well, you guys
I'm listening.
can
I just have
stop
a
your own
second
video
computer
too.
around
there.
in my little alchemy lab. So it's just, I'm still in the room listening to everything. I'm just setting stuff up so I can show you my little lab here in a minute when I move my
Okay.
video camera. But I'm still here.
Okay. So
Look forward to it.
the thing is that John has taken them to people and they didn't know what the hell to do with this shit. But his were like this big, you know.
Oh, the ones I took
Yeah,
to.
and then when we were in Minnesota, you took them to the government or whatever they didn't know what to do, okay?
Yeah.
And I mean, then we had a bunch of them that were probably 8 inches tall and had them in a box. And I was talking to my state legislator in Minnesota and seeing if there's something that, you know, for energy wise, they could get behind us. And the guy thought we had a box full of pipe bombs.
Oh
And-
man, I could tell you guys a funny story about that exact same thing happening to me, but it wasn't quite, well, not quite the exact same thing. But let's just say officials mistook, while raiding my lab, a laser pointer for some kind of homemade pipe-based incendiary, and brought in the X-ray team and evacuated the entire neighborhood because they found this black laser pointer. And had no idea what it was. They'd never seen one of those really big monsters, and they were freaking out. They brought it in, X-rayed it, and they're like, "We have no idea what this is," and they're real embarrassed, man. Oh, that whole team of like 20 people was so embarrassed about that. They tried to make the whole thing go away as far as, you know, admitting what they had done.
Yeah,
Wow, that's,
Yeah. yeah, okay, yeah.
Crazy government.
I know, it was really crazy shit. I mean, I was just on a plane and I had this bizarre thing happen to me where I was in the window seat, I was really sick, I was in the bathroom hanging on the walls for a while, got back, I finally said, okay, I'll talk to the person next to me, maybe that'll help. Here, he's out of Berkeley, he wasn't going to be on that flight, but he came a day early. He's going to a conference in Minneapolis where I was going, and he works in taking skin cells and putting chemicals on them, and they become stem cells, and then they use that to treat diabetic patients. You know, they're able to tell those cells to be something else. And you know, I was ready to barf most of the trip, so I didn't really catch a lot. But at the end of it, he said it was mRNA, which is what the COVID shit is. And you know, the COVID vaccine, my own take on that is this whole entire planet got trashed by Fukushima. We did some stuff for it in the Gulf of Mexico. We have done some restoration work, and I can go into that, you know, the proof of what we've been restoring. But still, there's a problem with our DNA and immune systems. That's what happens when you get hit by radioactive contamination. You don't know it. And, you know, we could have had an actual disease that is now called COVID. Could have been something that got genetically modified, or Fukushima keeps burping. They keep burping fucking shit. And we used to track it. We haven't tracked it in years. But there could have been a real big outpouring of more radiation from Fukushima, and they knew that the population was going to get sick. And so they used it to bring out their mRNA and quite frankly, this is in complete seriousness. There's been enough shit blow out of Fukushima to kill this planet 1,000 times over. It's just going to take a little bit of time. Okay, and we're not going to actually be aware that it's radiation poisoning. And so I think that there's a lot in mRNA that could have the potential of repairing that damage, and that it might have been a Hail Mary that went out there to try to get as much as the human population with their, this mRNA as an attempt to repair the damage from Fukushima. And of course, it's fucked up. We didn't have the shots. We both supposedly got COVID. I thought I got poisoned, but John didn't get affected that bad. But still, I've been more exposed to Fukushima's radiation than John. John's always been with the equipment, where I've gone out of our field many times. So anyway, what that comes down to is we don't have a lot of time to fix shit.
No, we don't.
We don't know if we got a generation. My daughter-in-law was pregnant, living in Portland with my son when Fukushima blew, and I begged and begged and begged that they would stay out of the rain, but it's Portland, and they didn't, and she lost the baby. And there was a huge increase in miscarriages and with babies that were born and died suddenly after in that time period, the 6 months or so after Fukushima blew. So
I didn't even know.
yeah, well, that people don't know. And part of it is how can they deal with it? Because if the populace of the world knew just how bad that shit is, there'd be complete anarchy, there'd be complete chaos. So I accept the decision not to tell everybody how fucking bad it is, because we would lose, like if you have a governor on your truck, keeps it from going too fast, the governor, that's what government is. It's a containment of chaos. And there would not be that ability to contain the chaos. And I totally believe in freedom, but people don't understand that if everybody was totally free, we'd end up with one person left alive on the planet, because freedom has to be contained. There has to be that, and the Jesus dude said it best, there's only one law, is don't fuck with somebody if you don't want to be fucked with. That's if you have that kind of an attitude, then things can be amenable. But we're not that way, and we haven't gotten there yet. And this Earth population would go absolutely fucking nuts. I mean, they would tear all this shit apart. I mean, look what happened just during, the George Floyd shit in Minneapolis.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, that was wild. How out of control that whole entire situation got and how wide it spread was just totally bonkers.
Yeah, I'm from that part of the hood. And, we're one block off of Crack Avenue. And you know who ran Crack Avenue? The cops. It was their business. Okay? So, this
The wild west.
yeah, and we were right in the middle of COVID, and all the police officers were supposed to have masks on, and nobody had a mask on, if you noticed that. It's like, okay, it is a manipulation of the human consciousness. And as long as the human consciousness is being manipulated into forgetting who they actually are, they're going to do stuff like fucking have plants in Fukushima that blow up and that have all this chaos that's going on the planet. There's a challenge with that. And a lot of people bitch that the government knows about anti-gravity, and they can, why don't we have anti-gravity cars? And well, it's because my grandparents, they're part of the Capone gang. And what happened was that they didn't have any license plates on the cars in Chicago. And people were going around with these cars and doing all kinds of bad shit. And so they had to put restrictions down. They had to get you having a driver's license to drive it. They have a plate on your car in order so that we can track the fucking criminals. How are we gonna do that if somebody's got an anti-grav vehicle? I mean, come
Well,
on.
it's a scary concept considering just how divisive and creative importers have been for all those things. You making their own submarines from scratch, digging massive tunnels. I mean, the effort that these guys are willing to put in and the money behind it in order to create a system like this. Well, let's just say there will be no containing any kind of a substance problem or distribution problem, and even more dangerously, the kind of things that could hurt people intentionally that could be delivered. But the only way to solve this problem is to make sure that everybody has it all at once, so that the criminals and the people that have illicit intent and the people that want to hurt others are equally up against others who have the ability to stop them and have the same tech or better tech. So it's got to be one of the things that it can't come out for a small group. It's got to come out for almost everybody all at once, so we all have it.
Yeah, I agree that we need to have a change in the controls, in the government, in the governing of the human consciousness. Personally, I think we need to do it by, on the trip back from Minneapolis, I'm in the boarding area and I hear this voice, and here it's the guy who sat next to me on the plane going out. And now he's with his group and they're going back. And I had changed where my seat was. I was going to be on aisle 20 or row 29 next to the window. So I went 24 and I went on the aisle so that if I had to barf, I could get up and maybe get to the bathroom. And so, I'm standing talking to him. I said, okay, this is just too bizarre of a coincidence. What row are you in? And he said 29. And I said, oh, that's good. I'm in 24. Okay, so I mean, I didn't even say 24. I said, oh, I'm not in that aisle and in that row. And so aisle people get loaded last. And I go and I sit down, and who's sitting right next to me? And I said, well, you're supposed to be in row 29. He said, yeah, but some lady asked me to change. And he didn't know I was in 24. Okay, so there is a reason that this all happened, because I had been putting stuff out there because we are the one consciousness and we're just like tentacles experiencing our own creation. And so I'm getting kind of fucking tired of the shit we built. It's really fascinating. You know, I just think it's amazing shit that we created. Okay, it's really cool. I don't want to sound disrespectful, but I'm getting tired of this shit. I want something new. And that's what I've been putting out there into the possibilities and pulling on those possibilities to make them happen. So I'd have to say that's why the guy sat next to me. And it is, we talked about what chemicals are. We talked about that when you are, you know, moving from point A to point B, when I move my arm like that, I'm actually creating an electromagnetic field. So when a thought is chosen and acted upon, that is actually creating the 3D. So out of the potential, we pull these thoughts and we act upon those thoughts, and we're creating this 3D. And so that as a resultant of that, of those combinations and those harmonics, we have what appears to be matter. And that matter has certain frequencies and certain, like, you know, likes to dance a certain way, you know, it's got a certain rhythm to it. And you got stuff like the carbon, that's the whore of Babylon from the Bible that likes to fuck everything and reproduce. And so, and we're carbon-based life forms, woohoo. So as I'm talking to him about this, the chemical is actually a frequency. And that frequency goes up to that skin cell and makes it remember that it's a stem cell.
So it basically, you know, reactivates certain DNA sequences, which probably would be called right now junk DNA, which they're slowly figuring out what it does. But
no,
yeah, all this.
No, your body right now is 10 years old. Everybody's body is actually 10 years old. because our cells reproduce, they die, reproduce, okay? And those cells in your body are all stem cells. They're replicated stem cells with, so like your skin with this little thing, your stem cell become a skin cell. You're gonna be a skin cell over here, but you're really a stem cell, but you fucking forget that you're a stem cell, okay? You just go over here and you be a skin cell. Well, they bring their little frequency up to the skin cell and say, hey, remember who the fuck you are? You're actually a fucking stem cell, boy, you know? And you can do whatever you want to do because you're a stem cell. You can be whatever you want to be. Okay, it's like my mom. You can be whatever you want to be. And so your skin cell is actually a stem cell. Your whole body is stem cells. And you've forgotten that.
Oh man, that reminds me of a funny little joke. So little Timmy was talking to his mom about what he's supposed to, think of for his future career day in class, and she says, "You could be anything you want, honey. The sky's the limit." And that's the day little Jimmy's dreams of being an astronaut were dashed.
Right, exactly. Right. Yeah. But so in the same respect, you are a consciousness, you're an individual consciousness, you're a fucking skin cell, but damn it, remember that you're the one consciousness. You are the stem cell. Your consciousness can do whatever you want to do.
So if I'm getting what you're saying, you're basically saying that the consciousness is what tells the stem cells what to become. And that's what basically dictates why they can all start out as basically the same stem cell. And we individual parts of our body know that this is going to be part of my hand, and that's going to be, something for producing bone, and this is going to be, a tendon and all this stuff. So you're saying that actually starts from not in the brain, I shouldn't say, but because I think of brain as consciousness, but really it's something a lot deeper than that. And you're saying that's what programs the body to grow and do what it does.
Yeah, the brain's just like it's like a computer with these different cores in it, and it's just observing different things and giving you feedback so that you can decide whether this is a spoon. Okay, so so you're getting all this information. See, I'm turning it around, and your brain's looking at that, and I can make some noise with it. Okay, maybe verify what you might think it's made out of. And so then you make a guess at what the fuck that thing is. And that's all that your brain does. Okay.
Yeah, it's basically like the telecommunication terminal between the consciousness and the rest of the body and its processing.
You're actually living, your response, your recognition of this as a spoon, it's in the past. You cannot exist in the present because you're constantly having to send signals to your brain to figure out what the fuck that's going on around here. And that takes, a fraction of a second, a microsecond, whatever it takes. But by the time you decide what it is, now you've got another input. And so now you're someplace else. And the only place where your brain isn't doing that kind of thing is when you're asleep, when you're unconscious. So consciousness came from unconscious. Unconscious is where all the potential is. So that's kind of where we're going into with John, with folding space and all that kind of stuff. Because why can he do that? Because he realized he's a fucking stem cell. And that he's not just a human consciousness. Okay? He realizes that he gets other inputs. He goes places, he lays out in the sun, he comes back, and it's like, who the fuck is this guy? Because he's got all this other stuff that just kind of like he downloads. And he gets information, and he's allowed himself to do that. First of all, because he's never been to school. He would go in the front door and then walk out the back door and walk in the woods.
Yeah.
They sent him to boarding school,
Yeah.
and he climbed out the window, went down the fire escape, and walked home.
Yeah,
So
true.
when he was 10 years old, they got him a tutor and they went in his bedroom and the tutor said, you got a chem lab here that's better than a university.
Yeah.
So he does, and you don't ever want to, you don't want to read a letter or an email from John because he never learned how to, sentence structure and shit and,
True.
punctuation or whatever.
Right.
But see, he doesn't concern himself with that.
No.
That's kind of like dumb shit, he's off doing, listening to static and figuring out patterns and figuring out how he can stick his pulse in there and change shit. That's what the x-axis is the fractal, the female is the fractal that does the replication. The Y is the one that brings in the change. And that's, like you've got an oak tree, and the oak tree's fractal, but the pine tree isn't. Pine tree's got the little pointies at the end.
Yeah, can I ask you a question about the spherical AC and DC power cell? Would a stainless steel sphere like this that we could easily attach work pretty well, or would it be better to use something plastic like this, which has two removable halves? And
well, you've got to have two spheres, okay? And one, I've gotten the aluminum things that you use to make bath balls, the bath bombs, and they're aluminum and they fit together.
nice.
Okay, and then you could use an inside can be like a hollow. Okay, if you got aluminum, then you want to go copper, like a hollow copper ball. But then you gotta get your leads in. You gotta get in there to get your positives and your negatives out and that kind of a thing. And then if you can hit it with frequencies, it's even better. And what I had made a Mobius winding, and I don't know if you've seen the Mobius heart speaker, but I used this Mobius winding, and it was Mobiuses that were like this, and then I took that and I twisted it and made that into a Mobius. So it was a string of Mobius, and I think there's about 10 or 12 wires. So it was pretty thick, coiling and stuff. And the thing just went boom, and rolled itself into a ball. Okay. And it rolled itself into a ball, the Mobius. And your heart is actually like that. Your heart is a Mobius strip, and it's like that. And if you take and dissect your heart and roll it out, it'll be exactly what I said. It's this big Mobius. Okay. And so I did that so that I could put the power cell inside of there, and we're going to, instead of having Johnny tubes, we're going to have Johnny balls. Okay, so that was so we could. So when I was testing it and running the audio through it, we have audio that goes into John's RF receivers and transmitters, transceivers.
Transmitters.
Right, so they have input of the audio and then he outputs the RF. I do phase shifting on audio, he does phase shifting on RF, so it's all this building this 3D RF thing that comes out.
Yeah, and your harmonics create all kinds of fractal interactions geometrically in physical space-time itself. So that's really nice when you happen to hit an audio frequency and a beat frequency and an RF beat frequency, and they happen to be harmonics of each other, even if they're 50 times or 50 orders of magnitude away.
So as I'm running the audio tones through, the thing starts playing the music. It's acting as a speaker in every direction. Okay, I put a steel ball bearing in it, and just wanted to see what happens, because when you do that with a piece of steel, you end up with a magnet, right? When you run a current over it. And I got a multi-pole sphere out of that.
Interesting.
Okay.
I know everybody on the live stream, is going to want to know when we go do this live, they're going to definitely want to know about the construction of that in detail, because that's going to captivate people, I think. I want to know more about it, really.
Well, and the reason I knew is I just took some iron filings and put them all over, and they stuck in all these different points on the ball. So,
That's neat.
yeah, so there's a lot to consider when we're talking about the power cells. Because the power cells, yes, they need to come out. They need to come into the market. We can figure something out that happens on a 3D printer and maybe create something the size of this little table, not the size of a little box that'll still run a house. We can do that with 3D printing. My son works at a company that makes the machines that build circuit boards. So, I mean, and he knows about what we're doing, and, you know, when he gets some shit, you know, show it to me. So that's what everybody says. We haven't gotten shit together yet, though. And that's the whole point. We've gone out, and John's had different investors, different people have said they're gonna put this much money, and then they have to have the business plan. And then we had a friend of Woody Neely, a friend of John's for 30 years, said he'd do the business plan. I used to do business plans, and I didn't want to, so I let him do it, and it just stinks. And he had like these different guys with lots of letters after their names that were getting like $250,000 worth of salary, and they had never built a power cell. And I said, why do you have them even in here? If they don't have the gumption to just go and get themselves some baking soda and cream of tartar and a couple pieces of metal, why would I want to fucking hire them if they can't do that fucking shit? You know? And
You
I
need people
kept
that
saying,
have skills and can work with these and with this at the same time. If they
Yeah.
can only do one of those two, it's not going to serve anybody.
so anyway, I kept telling him, you know, there these, and John kept, you know, sending different videos from YouTube of people that picked up on that video and started making stuff and
Yeah.
doing things with it. And I kept saying, we need to do this like as a, you know, groundswell. We need to do this as people that have decided that they are going to change things.
My investors would take this to Canadian government folks, and Japan, they took it to one of the prefecture guys. But it all winds up that nobody's interested in factory production.
Right. The thing is that there are a lot of ideas and a lot of proof of concept, but there is nothing that fills that this huge void between proof of concept and a prototype that can be manufactured. I mean, not just these power cells. This is just one of the things that have happened, especially with, I mean, like my great uncle invented the radiator that's used in every car, but he could do that back in 1900.
Yeah.
And he had a machine shop, and he could, you know, it was easy to actually get in your shop and make something that then could be reproduced. And whatever, you know, there isn't that place that we can go to with this proof of concept. So we have to make it happen. And I don't think it's going to happen from some PhD who won't get off their ass. We actually had that. Somebody was going to come and nanotech this, someone who was in carbon nanotubes and stuff. And, you know, we set up a place for him to live and a place to work where we were at in Oregon. And that stupid ass had not ever built a power cell.
No.
Spent the first week with him, showing him how and making him build a power cell. And it's like, now, can you take that process and put it into a nano? You know, it's just.
There was interest in the government folks. There was Pentagon folks who wanted one of the power cells. There was ex-Congressman Berkeley Fidel showed up at my place with his wife Eleanor and was very interested in it. Dennis Kucinich, another congressman.
Right, but everybody wants to have something that's got a little outlet on it that you stick a plug, you know, that you plug something in. Everybody wants to see that. And
I think Peter Garrettson just wanted a power cell. He was with the Air Force Division in the U.S. Pentagon Group. advanced procurement officer for technology. I'm still in contact with him. I still keep him updated, and Colonel John Alexander.
Right, but now,
Again, it's
we got some hobbits here, okay?
yeah.
So we need
I'm a
to,
hobbit, too.
yeah, he's proper hobbit, so. So the thing is, can we somehow work with some folks, show them what we know, and see if they can come up with something that can be released?
guys.
Yeah, released, that's what we were talking to you guys about, something that can be released to the public. And maybe it's just a damn electric typewriter, it doesn't even have the LED display on it, but it's something that gets them away out of using a pen and paper. You know, they're having to depend upon a pen, now they've got a tool that can get them even further.
Yeah. Well, I think,
Are we still there? Okay, we're
we're-
still there,
yeah. I think
okay. And so, but
these guys are quite bright.
yeah, I know they're quite bright, but the thing is how to organize it. And, you know, I don't want to do that. I think you guys can organize this, and we'll show you everything that we know, and show you some of the little trips. You know, we got some doping things that go on, but still it's the material, the prima tartar is actually been cut. It's the waste product from the winemaking, those crystals that come at the top of the vat, and they take that and they cut it with, I think it's calcium carbonate.
Mhm.
And so we have direct access to that where we're at, and it actually has about 50% more power to it because it hasn't been cut. But it's just a matter of finding how do we get these things to either play together in series or just say, fuck it, you're only gonna go 5, I'm gonna take your power off at 5, so we're gonna have this thing at 5 volts. And then, you know, we just have, you know, 10,000 capacitors on that sucker, and we just pull the energy off that way. I mean, there's a lot of experimenting that needs to be going on to either work with it or try to understand it instead of force it to do something that it isn't. And it is creating some type of magnetic field there. But, you know, that could be very exciting, finding out what that is.
Yeah, what we really need is a community effort behind this. We need a lot of the people that aren't coming from academia, who have the open minds to consider a different phenomena going on than just the catalytic battery or power cell reaction that I think people are mistaking this for, because
Right.
it's a totally different chemistry, and the way that it operates is not at all like a battery.
Right, yeah.
Right, I mean, you can short it out and it comes back. And I mean, I mean, there's all kinds of things, like I've had them just go down and piddle down to like 0.15 volts. And then what I'll do is I'll just start tapping it, taking power off, and I'll get it back up to like 4 or 5 volts. You know, so, you know, that's where it's all these different things that you have to understand, just working and understanding what it is. And if you understand this is what life is like, you know, then we get into that next step, and we go from a typewriter and we go into, you know, iPhone right away or something. You know, it's that fast that it happens.
Mhm.
Yeah, figure if 100 people are playing around with this thing and playing with formulations, which we would obviously want to encourage heavily, just adding different things, playing with different formulas, and especially the more rare earths and stuff could help tremendously. And yttrium could possibly be a converter. There are other natural converters of beta voltaics, which you could mix in, say, raw or uranium ore, and possibly extract even more power. I mean, there's a number of things, but if everybody is starting to play around with variants, it's just one garage breakthrough, one of those 100 people per se that are going to find out how to, you know, quadruple that power.
Yeah.
I got a question for John. Have you ever worked with Nathan Stubblefield type coils that you actually put in the ground?
Mesa, what kind of coil?
Nathan Stubblefield coils.
Coils in the ground. You mean you're talking about pulling energy out of the ground?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Stubblefield did.
Oh, you mean, Major Stubblefield?
No,
Nathan
no.
Who? What?
Nathan Stubblefield.
I don't know the name, but, I don't know. I haven't
Yeah,
done anything much in groundwork except for radio waves.
mm,
That kind
yeah,
of thing.
he was doing transmission of sound using two basically ground rods about several, meters away, and he had no batteries hooked up to it. It was getting all the power from the ground by making these special coils, put it in the ground with a ground rod, and
Okay.
he could transmit sound. So yeah, he's got it up on the screen there.
Okay, thank you. I've just used trees for, receiving.
This wire transmission was like pre-Tesla, and actually Tesla went to go visit him at his farm. He was a farmer,
Mhm.
and that's where he was getting this, energy from the ground, and that gave Tesla a lot of ideas.
No, haven't done anything like that. I just use ground, bars to transmit ELF radio waves or pick them up and listen to them. Or I use
Yeah.
trees.
Well, he was making these special coils using iron wire, and just the way he configured the coils, they're like bifilar coils. And
Okay.
he would dig a hole, stick them in the ground, and the earth energy would accumulate inside those coils, and it would power his telephone system.
That is cool.
Yeah.
That's how
That is
wait,
really
isn't that how the telegraphs? I think the telegraph system was that way.
They
Yeah.
use ground.
This was
Yeah.
just before the telegraph started going. Yeah.
Yeah, the telegraph system used that.
Yep, and trees as well.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like the old vintage stuff.
Yeah, something to look into.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
See, I've got there was a couple of questions I wanted to ask about, and these are questions that people have been asking me for years wanting to know, and I've only got 4 of them. One, you remember this? Remember these mics? Because that looks familiar, hey?
The old microphones.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So in the video where you were showing translational movement and talking about the possible anti-gravitational effects of that translational movement, you had a large barium titanate cylinder, which I believe is a Navy ship or a large submarine sonar transducer. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
And then you also had a mic that looked exactly like this, but I'm thinking this is probably the same one. This model is just, for posterity, it's the model F96, and it comes in a low impedance and a high impedance. Now, somebody is convinced and had been trying to insist that you were putting audio into this microphone instead of and pumping this thing like a transducer instead of using this to pick up the field from the barium titanate cylinder. So just to answer it, was this used as a mic or was this used as a output transducer?
Well, I used the mic and it went through a grounded bridge crown amplifier number 600, 1972 grounded bridge type. And basically what I did, use the microphone against the barium titanate itself, and it caused a feedback. Same kind of thing you get with a speaker.
Exactly. So it's just the same feedback that you get from putting a guitar in front of a speaker. That's just like that.
Yeah.
That's what we thought too. He was absolutely convinced that you must have been using some kind of sound output from this, and there was interference the ways. I'm like, dude, do you know the power output of this mic if you feed it backwards? Kilowatts, man. It's not gonna work. Well, okay, thanks for answering that question. So that's
I had a lot of fun with that stuff. Yeah, it was just a simple thing you could do with that stuff.
it's pretty cool. And another question that's been asked, this is actually almost 2 years ago. What was the sparkless Tesla coil that you talked about? I think it was on an interview with Tim Ventura, perhaps. You mentioned using a sparkless Tesla coil for something involving the Hutchinson effect. And there were questions about what the heck that was. What is a sparkless Tesla coil? Do you remember that?
That's largest Tesla
A
coil?
sparkless, one with no spark.
Oh, yeah. That would be a copy Tesla's disruptive discharge transformer. And I also had a two 601 tube, vacuum tubes, two of them that drove a Tesla coil without any sparks.
Okay, that's probably, I'm guessing that was probably what you were referring to then, which gives you a nice continuous wave output.
Yeah, and it was very strong output, and George Hathaway measured it, I believe, and other people, and no sparks, but it sure lit up a neon tube. I demonstrated on the 6 o'clock news.
Oh, is that the one that's in that one video? Yeah.
Yeah, I have it on video, and it's holding a neon or a fluorescent tube above it, and it lit up and that kind of fun stuff. Yeah, that was a fun build.
Those
Just
are
a basic-
great. The tube coils are awesome because you can just light up a filament on a ball by having it close on that thing. I don't mean make it glow like plasma glow, but I mean like that
Yeah.
the full luminescence.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
By the way, John, Gerald says hi. You might have remembered him as Billy the Kid and asked how your how good old Captain Harvey is doing, if you know.
Excellent. Awesome. Hello back. So I had a lot of fun in the old days with all that vintage electrical machinery, and like sometimes we'll sit in the dark and watch the sparks go off and transform and all that fun stuff.
Oh yeah, that stuff is awesome.
Oh yeah, that's it. All that stuff was available
So-
everywhere as surplus scrap. Nobody wanted it.
Have we answered the, I've tried to get this out there. I don't know if I did with you guys. But when John was messing around with watching a spark between, were they points or were they circles? What were they about your spark gaps?
Oh, the spark gaps are around the balls,
Round balls.
3/4 inch in diameter.
Okay, so he's making this spark between these two balls. And then he applies radio frequencies
And electrostatic energy,
and electrostatic energy, okay?
as I call it.
And he's watching, and then there's this levitation stuff happening around his lab. This is the first time it happened.
Oh my God. that's a long
Okay,
time ago.
But nobody asked the question, what happened to the spark? At the time that the levitation happened, something happened to that spark. And that spark created this flower pattern.
Yeah.
And when the flower pattern appeared, that's when the levitation effects happened.
Like 2 flowers on the terminal and no spark in between the balls, which are pretty close. So it had me kind of,
I'm trying to imagine what this flower pattern actually looked like, just as a visualization. I mean, was it like, plasma spires kind of shooting out sideways between the two spherical terminals, or?
2 balls like that. Let's see if I'm going to focus there. 2 balls like that on insulators. One connected to ground of Van de Graaff generator, the other to the higher terminal, positive, and vice versa. And it would not jump, it would just go into this flower effect on top of the terminal, like
Effluvia, like plasma.
that, kind of like your hand, like all flower, white, silvery kind of light.
And when that happened, the stuff started flying around his lab.
That's
it's-
wild that you've seen it too in the spark app. A really important question that I've been wondering for a long time, which is, how did you actually inject the output from the signal generators into that high voltage system? Because it's not exactly easy to apply a high frequency AC at a different frequency than your high voltage generator. So that would be something I've always
All
done.
all these things are separate. You don't have an intermix in time and space or in an area of radio waves, high voltage on magnetic fields as well, within an electrostatic field and Tesla waves.
Interesting. And did the sound of the spark gap along with its firing frequency change as well when these effects started to happen, as if power was either being communicated to it or drawn from it? Almost like it had a wireless connection, just you heard the effect.
I was trying to get the spark gap to break up as much as I could. And then I slowly worked my way off of that into more refined vacuum tube technology and used vacuum tubes to create the high frequency I wanted. And then later on, I returned to a xenon tube spark gap system.
Oh yeah, those things are awesome.
That's up in my apartment lab, or the submarine as people call it, where I did a lot of stuff. So I condensed my stuff down to maybe 10 tons or 15 tons of stuff, instead of 30 tons or 40 tons of stuff.
I mean, are you guys still there?
Hello?
Yeah, 100%.
Can't see you or hear you.
I think, can you hear me?
Some,
Can you hear
can't see you or hear you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I guess you guys are like, you must have my video pinned. So if I step out for a second to get off cam, I guess that's all you're seeing. It's not like showing you as your own presenter. I got one of those things here. Let me just pop it out. Yeah, there we go. So these good old boys.
Oh, yeah, they're fun. I got
This
mine
one
on.
is
Hear me?
what
Can
does it say,
you-
8 kilowatts. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think this is
can you hear me?
8,000 watts rated. We can hear you, Bernie. Yeah.
Okay,
Got mine off the warships that I worked on. They're sitting in the in the storeroom. Oh, they come with me in all the different tubes and different stuff over 4 warships later, 5 years later.
I don't know if they know this. John worked for the Artificial Reef Society, and he took apart like the big guns on the ship, and you know, he was in charge of a lot of different, you know, weird shit on the ship to get it so that they could sink it.
Yeah, it was all
Yeah.
all electronics and all artillery.
Right, and
ordnance.
he didn't get paid.
No, I didn't want any money. I already got
Oh,
money.
he got paid in the equipment, right? The good stuff.
Right,
I got money from Japan to do my
right,
energy stuff.
no, but he got,
I didn't
that's
wanna
where he got
complicate- I
20
didn't want
tons.
to complicate things.
Yeah, got 20 tons of equipment in that 400 square foot apartment though, from coming off.
Tons. Yeah, that's what's up, man.
Yeah, I could win an engineering award for that.
So. Anyway,
did you guys hear me when I was talking about Mike's builds with his graphene magnesium batteries? And if those power cells are more similar in principle to the crystal battery cells as opposed to your standard batteries, Mike?
well, I have tried a few magnesium ones.
Mhm.
Part of our system is bringing the Rochelle salts, and then we add magnesium sulfate. That when we did that, we increased the amperage, which makes sense because that's what your body needs in order for you to move is magnesium. Magnesium is the one that carries the energy. So I have not done, you know, other than that, I think I did some where I tried just the straight magnesium and I wasn't successful with it. So
Yeah,
I
Well,
think that
I did.
there's an opportunity for people to get together and figure out, well, which system. I mean, I know that my the rock with 2 screws in it, like when we came back from the Gulf of Mexico, we were down there during the BP oil disaster with that. And when we came back, that still was giving out power, but it was down to that like 0.15 volts, and that I had to keep messing with it, getting the energy flowing on it to get it back up. I don't know what happens to these other guys' power cells. I mean, I'm really glad that people are you know, taking this and running with it. But I don't know what happens. Can they sit for in will they totally go dead? Or do you have to keep taking the energy off? Or, you know, what's the mechanism with the magnesium? Magnesium's got to be playing with something there in order to get that differentiation between the electromotive forces of the metals. So, I don't think straight magnesium would work. Maybe a magnesium salt, you know, because, you know, but magnesium, Epsom salts didn't just by themselves work. And, yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
then there's barium titanate, but that's costly stuff. I mean,
Yeah, we were
Yeah,
gonna
this-
stop for that.
the
Yeah,
cell I
unfortunately,
was
it really
working
is.
on.
Go ahead.
I was paid a $250,000 to build these things for Japanese, and later another $250,000 for German folks.
It's not cheap.
No, it's very costly. I told them it's costly. You can take it or leave it. I don't care.
But then you just,
But first people that had approached me on all this stuff was a group of businessmen around the world, the ReaTrade group. And they were being conned into something that somebody has a magnet on a 2x4, and I said, forget it. Don't talk to me about that nonsense. No, it's fake. So they asked me if I could create 1 volt with something that's non-moving. I said, I sure can. I can probably do that for you, and maybe it's a milliamp or two, because I knew that I had barium titanate cylinders and I could do something with them. So it paid me 10,000. I made them a device. Waiting for investors from China, 24 million, but they never showed up. And then they, Carl David Anderson and the other gentleman went their separate ways. I went mine and ran into Richard Burr from England, and we built more of them and took them to the Canadian government. They put them right on their table in their research and development area in Vancouver.
Yeah,
They just said, we don't know what to do. Take it to the military. Richard Burr really didn't like that idea. I didn't care. So Richard had to return to England then.
there's something else that we talked about too, and it was very expensive. We had those wafers made.
Oh, crystal wafer, yeah.
Yeah, crystal wafers, and I said, couldn't we 3D print those things?
That was Sirac and Goodfellow.
Yeah, but if we could 3D print those suckers, he ran a light bulb off of that, a 60-watt light bulb.
Yeah,
And but
I
the,
had my fun with those.
what
things.
happened, what was it, the crystals broke down or something? What was it? Why did that stop working? Because the crystals broke or what?
Oh, and the one for Japan?
No, here, we had it in Oregon, you had that too.
Oh, yeah, the crystals just brought it out.
How big were these wafers? I mean, were these PAs with electric wafers?
What kind of wafers were they?
They were quartz crystal wafers, about 30 millimeters in diameter, about 1/8 of an inch thick. Running from-
Yeah. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, he has some, I think.
They were frosted by probably hydrofluoric acid at Goodfellows, and then deposited mixtures of rare earths on them, different combinations. I wanted what they call self-reactive material, and I made those things, and I had to take a lot of precautions when going to Japan with them, because the aircraft people looked it up and said, well, it's self-reactive material. It got to be in a hard case, airtight container, and all this and that, which I provided. Made it to Japan, gave my demonstrations, then returned back to Canada, and then went down to the United States many times with this container. I showed the customs people, and they would open it up, and I said, it's not a bomb.
Yeah,
They started laughing.
the principle on it is that you've got these,
Or just look at,
but the quartz wafers, quartz are gonna have a frequency to them, and you're gonna
Yeah,
put pressure
I know.
on them, and they're gonna put off a frequency.
yeah,
And then that frequency interacts with your rare earths under pressure,
yeah, these are under spring pressure,
Right.
adjustable by a micrometer.
right?
That's interesting. So were they wafers like these ones here? Something kind of like
Something
this?
Yeah, kind of like that.
Did you have the metal plating on both sides?
No, I just had a coating of rare earths on each side.
Rare,
I don't have I might have the original receipts of Goodfellow, which if I find them in my pile of endless papers, I would copy them and send them off to you or whatever. But it was a busy time. I mean, spending time in Japan, going to one city after another city, it's a lot of fun. I was with Dr. Brian Berry at the time.
okay,
So
so,
we both had fun.
so he had made that back in '90s,
Yeah,
and
90s.
then he made it again when we were in Oregon.
Yeah.
But 2015 or so, but, I mean, it was
It was good stuff.
$20,000 for those wafers.
Yeah, pretty.
How much?
$20,000 for those wafers.
I demonstrated to George Haskell.
No, that is way too much.
My first
Oh
prototype.
man.
First prototype I demonstrated to George Hathaway and Dr. Hal Pudoff, who stayed an extra day. I got the idea off the warships actually to do all that stuff.
You know what I'm thinking right now is you got rare earths, but what about noble gases?
Beautiful stuff to play with. You can get standing waves and glass tubes with that stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, if you put it under pressure, like if you did.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, if you did, because nobles don't like to fuck with anything, you know, and they get kind of irritated when you run electricity through. them, when you
Oh,
put
boy,
movement
does he
through 'em.
ever, they.
Okay, so
Blow up.
I bet you could get them to self-activate. I bet you could.
With
Could
a high
be.
enough potential, for sure, you're definitely going to get ionization. Heck, we did a little experiment where I just simply took some mercury and put it inside of a glass bulb, and that glass bulb was dielectric. It'll work the same way as a lot of these other things. Anyways, I evacuated the bulb as best my pump could do, and went and shut the lights off, waited for my eyes to adjust, and then I just swirled that thing around in hand about this speed right here, and everywhere that mercury touched on that surface, we had a glowing blue aura, and on the surface of the mercury inside the bulb, not even touching anything, this opposite of the glass, it was glowing purple, which tells me it was reaching ionization potentials of nitrogen, or N2, in the atmosphere. In order to not ionize that at the pressure I had, you need about 380 volts, which means just stirring that thing at a few RPMs, or I should say a few RPS, was more than enough to generate hundreds and hundreds of volts, maybe even thousands of volts, but we had a couple of little flashes. So tremendous effects with any kind of charge flow and charged particles. And I can only imagine, because I did also stick some phosphors in there to see what it would do, and it started going all kinds of interesting colors. But again, some of those gases I was using, nitrogen mainly is not a noble gas, but if you had replaced that with, say, xenon, for example, which is a really, really high ionization threshold, you wouldn't get anything up to a certain point, and then when you hit that limit, you'd start to get a ton of energy release.
Oh, yeah.
What if
If
you-
you take a radio and put on a dead spot on the band and put it close to it, you can
That's a
hear
great
it.
idea. I didn't try that yet, but I'm definitely going to now.
Yeah, do it. It's fun. I did that a long time ago with the mercury stuff. I
What
would
if you-
shake it around
Oh,
like
that's
that.
awesome.
Yeah,
And
Yeah,
yeah, wait, you
but-
could stir mercury and hear it?
yeah. I learned about that in the 70s, reading a book, Our Haunted Planet. And I got some mercury and played with it and put it by the radio. You can hear it crackling sounds and all kinds of cool stuff.
That's awesome.
You'll have fun
That's
with that.
totally awesome. I'm going to definitely try that.
Oh, yeah, do it. And hook it to an oscilloscope as well. Get the audio from the radio or whatever, or a spectrum analyzer. You can actually see all the stuff too. It's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And since I've never seen anybody actually post a video about that kind of stuff or really much information, sounds like a great thing to do an experiment on and pop it up on YouTube so people can learn from it.
Go for it. I mean, you probably get millions of views or 100,000 views.
If anybody cared about this stuff, but we'll at least get a few hundred.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, getting the, releasing the technology to the masses of how to excite some xenon gas and get millions of volts probably isn't going to be something we can do in the near future until we get people that actually can handle that information without blowing everything up.
Well, I didn't see it on gas in the tubes in the apartment.
I know, but it's how do we bring the human consciousness forward?
Media.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, think about it just 100 years ago, the technologies and what the human consciousness has had to adapt to in the last 100 years.
Quite amazing, actually.
It
all the
really
stuff.
is. And we got the criminals getting smarter and smarter, and
Yeah.
they still are at arms with each other and threatening nuclear war when nuclear war is so 1950. It's like it doesn't even fit what the technologies are for war today. It'd be like saying, in 1950, well, we're threatening to come over there with our muskets and shoot you. It's gone that far. The nuclear war isn't even a threat. It's so last year, because of the things that they can have to defend against someone who's got a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how far they are with
Oh, I'm sure.
antimatter production by the 1985. They were talking about it at Los Alamos about it being an anti-gravity field.
But see, we need to get humans out of their Velikovsky syndrome, this thing where they have to separate into tribes because resources are limited, and you got, your group who's got a good king that's got to go kill the bad king over there and take over those resources. But those guys in that group say they have the good king, and so they're going to defend against that and take your shit. I mean, that's what our whole mentality is.
It's all based on scarcity. This insane idea that there is X amount of whatever to go around, and that's it, and that's all there's ever going to be, and we have to fight over it. It's like, why don't we just find better solutions? Why don't we end this scarcity problem? We have more than enough technology, more than enough land space, farmable land to provide, and solve the world's hunger problems, but there's no money in it, so.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that whole thing with Earth currency.
Well, currency, money is a representation of human
I'll be
energy.
back in a minute.
It's so whoever controls the money controls the human energy. And what I had thought of with these power cells, and to do some kind of a crowdfunding or crowd working, it's one thing to get the money, then you got to get the people that actually do the fucking work, okay? And so, you got to have the people that are willing to do the work. And, if we're all living in utopia, who's going to pump my septic tank? I mean, I wouldn't want that job, and somebody has that job because he needs some money. So how do we agree to do these nasty fucking shitty jobs?
Simple. We got to go back to a more fundamental system that actually makes sense for humans. Instead of trading fake fiat currencies, what we really need to do is start trading services and skills and talents and passions. Because
the
there's no
poop
scarcity.
removal job will be done by robots and drones at the point once energy is free, and that every human has the ability for limitless free energy to be applied within their lives and within their work.
Okay, let's go with that. That's okay, and that works. We have people like with greed and that kind of shit. The way I feel and live is that I have my needs taken care of, and that doesn't mean necessarily have all my wants, but it's the wants that get in the way. When people want something, they're going to even harm somebody else in order to get what they want. So it's a human aspect that needs to be addressed. And I don't know if actually I do know a way of doing it, but it's kind of sneaky shit. So
It is hard to say. I mean, we don't know if really, there's not really a whole lot of evidence in support of this idea that the human species can get over its warlike, scarcity-based mindset. But if they could get rid of fear, we would really have a new golden era.
Okay, so these power cells, let's go outside the box and just play with this shit for a minute. So, let's say they become, I was in a lot of barter groups back in the day. And so I really understand the bartering system. And say we whoever, contributes whatever, we have some type of a thing that they get a power cell once it's developed, right? That's our give back to the people that gave in, right? But also it becomes a bartering system. And so I will barter with my grocery store, and I'll give them so many of these blocks that'll take care of their power in their store forever if they feed me so much of their groceries every month. And it could be that it's a new cryptocurrency type of a system, a quasi cryptocurrency, so that the power cells themselves become the currency, the new current. See?
Absolutely. Nice. Oh, that one actually caught me. That's funny. Absolutely. If you can generate, if you have a system and you're really good at making power cells, and they can help a farmer to make their operation efficient, or basically no longer need those external resources because they can run all their pumps and all their tractors and everything else, everything they need off these types of energy sources, then yeah, why wouldn't they easily take you up on providing you all the food that you needed, and maybe for your little community, if you basically remove all the costs from their process of actually farming.
Right. But and you can barter if you had free energy, you got a box and say, you know, give this to you and it'll run your house forever. All the electricity you need in the house. What would you trade me for that? You know, and it would be a new, or, you know, we could give out all all the specs, but you know, you're sitting in a chair, there's a table there. I know how to build a chair and I know how to build a table. But then I'd have to go get some fucking wood, and I'd have to like get out a circular saw, and I have to find some electricity and plug it in. And then I'd have to like, you know, make the table, and then I'd have to find some screws, and I have to go find somebody to get me some screws. And maybe they don't want to give me any screws, and I have to figure out how to get the table legs on. You know, I can make this table, right? But it wouldn't be as good, and it would take me a lot of my time and energy. So I'd rather buy the table. And that's the way a lot of people are about, I can see that with this. We had 1 million hits on the two YouTube channels on the power cells. Nobody's taken it to the next level. And because it's easier to just use the current technology and not go through the process of learning how to build a table, which is what needs to happen with the power cells. And so we learn how to build the table, and there are going to be people that don't want to spend the time building the table, and they'll say, okay, I'll trade you. You know, you give me your power cell box, and I'll give you that. And we end up with a whole, you know, forget bricks and, you know, oil backed currencies and all that. There isn't anymore. And everybody's got the ability to make this stuff. And all they choose is whether they make it or if they want to trade to get one.
Yeah, well, you won't go thirsty because power goes out and there's no water. You run the pumps off that thing. In winter, you don't have to freeze to death or have to worry about buying, fossil fuel heating sources or piping in natural gas. You just run it off one of these things, electric heaters. And yeah, they have a long ways to go. But again, this is like I said, it's like one garage discovery away from somebody finding just that right combination of materials. Using Rochelle salts is a genius idea, and you're already getting your piezoelectric conversion there, especially if you can tap those atomic vibrations, which I think is part of what you're doing. But if another material happened to enhance that effect tremendously, which I'm sure that there's perfect materials out there to do this that are barium titanate expensive, cheaper things. Yeah, it could change things overnight. Well, almost overnight. It's going to take a generation to get rid of the scarcity mindset, because some people they've never really known what it's like to produce something independently or to trade and barter on their own outside of a corporate structure. So it's going to be a very new approach and a new system should something happen to the economy and people have to actually figure out how to live on their own. But it's not something we're incapable of doing. We've survived crazy stuff before, earthquakes hit places and roads are destroyed and all the resources are gone and power's out, but that doesn't stop us from rebuilding. We can still move on from that, even if we lose what we currently rely on. So I believe everybody can. I just think it's going to be the older generations that might have to kind of cycle this out, and the younger generations be taught that you can do local power generation. You don't need to buy these resources, so that it's in their minds as a possibility, and they grow up thinking about ways to work in the new economy where it's basically trade and barter or skill based.
Well, so I mean, if there's a way for you guys to reach out and maybe get some minds together on this of kind of the steps, what I can tell you where we're at with these cells and where we need to get to in order to make this shift where people are people have access to it or they can trade for it, right? So if we go through what those steps are, whether it's crowdfunding or, you know, we've got a nonprofit, we've got a little bit of funds in there. If we throw some money in there for a 3D printer and somebody starts printing them, or, you know, however it works out, we just need kind of like a general plan of, you know, what, because it's gonna morph, you know, it's gonna have its life of its own. But kind of where we're trying to get with this, we're trying to get to where we have something that we can put out on the internet and somebody can take a 3D printer, or they can make it in the, you know, in Africa, someplace in the bush, I don't care, you know, that we have, this is the system, and this is what you put this thing together, and it's gonna, you can run your TV with it or whatever, you can run your house with it. So we give that to the people. And then we also have the option, if you don't want to build it, we'll trade you. So, you know, we could feed a lot of hungry people, you know, with
Right.
we can feed a lot of hungry people just making these things and getting it into the hands of the food producers and distributors, and end up just shipping that food to everybody, you know, whatever. You know, we don't have, I don't need that much food, you know, but maybe somebody, I'm sure somebody else could eat it, you know.
Yeah,
And we could change the whole system.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's gonna take a couple steps is the main aspect of it. And the first one is that we should do like Mike, myself, Jeremiah, and Charlie wasn't able to show up tonight, but we each have like our own little followings of backyard scientists and community members that are all doing the experiments, building them, and lots of them have built your original crystal battery cells, so that it's like if we can do a stream where then people can each come in, talk about what types they've done, ask their specific questions, as well as have it set up in a segment where the first part will go over all the ingredients, supplies that you need to make it. The second part will be us actually making a live one, as well as, for instance, Charlie's made a couple of them already that he can show off. If you guys can give like a live demo of the ones that you've made, and maybe show an example of the smaller one that you got going into the, like just the live experiments of like the one in the little grid system, the electric circuit system, and then like the star configuration, and just showing your guys's discoveries and knowledge off of it, like how it'll short up or how you can put them into circuit system, what's the right term I'm trying for here, series circuit up to a certain amount of them, and then highlight the issues of like, hey, we can get this sort of power off of it. The competition for the next month's stream, if you want to be on it, is to show off your personal design for all the little hobbits out there, to then recreate them, show their experiments, and keep the progression going, sort of thing.
Great. And I think we have like an attic in the lab, and I literally packed all the power cell stuff and put it up there when this guy said he was gonna go and do the business plan. So, and so that portion of the lab where it's doing power cells is now full of radio receivers and transmitters for John's work. So, you know, for me, I guess I could maybe do one in the kitchen here, you know. But
yeah, even where you guys are right now, if you just like tabletop, like right in front of, in between where you two are sitting, or like anything. It doesn't have to be fancy for the first one. I'm sure the community would be more than excited just at the opportunity to see it and put the idea out there. And then as it gets going, we'll worry about making it look beautiful and all of that.
Well, and I think really with the understanding with the people that are going to be grouped together to do this, that we're doing crowdfunding of people. You know, this is instead of somebody putting $10 in, they're going to put some time into this, and that with the expectation that this is going to be something that goes out and will be available to the public. How to build this will be available to the public for no charge. You know, and then we can talk about, you know, that we can build them if people don't want to, and they can trade for them. We won't take money, we'll take trade. And we'll, as a group, decide what to do with it. You know, where to go with it. You know, we get to the point where we've got something that you can literally plug in your TV set into this box of cells. At that point, I think we got to get it out there to anybody and everybody who wants to make one. And at the same time, we have to be ready to make them ourselves for trade, for the new currency.
Absolutely. It's very similar philosophy and method that the Keshe Foundation is using, whether you know about them or believe in the validity of their work. A lot of what I've studied.
I tried seeing him probably 8 years ago or so.
Who?
Keshe, and
Kathy.
Keshe, Keshe, and you know, just, you know, like hello, you know, we're working on stuff, do you want to communicate? And he just went off, you know, saying that John Hutchinson was trying to destroy him or something. It was just the weirdest thing, and I'm like,
yeah,
no.
He himself is a bit like cultish and weird, and it's like my experiences with him have been similar, but I've gotten to know a couple of the community members that are in his group that are over in North America, and studied the science aspects of what he was teaching, and a lot of it has been I verified through my own experiments and whatnot. But yeah, I know what you're saying that way. Like whenever I try to bring up someone else's research, he just like have a shit fit and
I don't know if I can agree, Bernie, with, I don't know if I can agree with Keshe, because the fact that he puts all this stuff behind a paywall and makes this an exclusive club is clearly not somebody that has a philanthropist viewpoint or wants to seriously see the world change. Because if you put this stuff behind a paywall, the people that probably need it the most, people with low income, you know, they're not going to have access to it, and that is a problem for me. Anyway.
Yeah, so many have done. And so the thing is he puts out all of his teachings for free, but it's like mixed in with all of his philosophical shit and then his egotistical shit. And then it's like you have to sift through 6 hours to get 5 minutes of quality content. But there's certain things that like the Ormus, he calls it GANs, I call it the monoatomic or plasma state matter. Is the jar screen showing up, Jeremiah, for everyone or no?
Oh yeah, your jar screen. I enabled share screen for everybody. So when you did that, you I think that highlighted for everyone. I hope.
Yeah. So if you can see that, this is it's the white monoatomic material I'm making that I first learned from Keshe, then looked into David Hudson, who has the original patents, and then went into Sir Isaac Newton's alchemy writings and descriptions where he describes this white monoatomic material. I'm making it just out of salt water and a little bit of electricity, as opposed to the chemical process of breaking down the bonds in a solid state metal. Is it covalent bonds they're called?
Yeah.
Yeah, all the covalent bonds into the single solid atom zero bond. And that's all the metals turn into this pure white state.
Well, thinking about that, you're using salts, Bernie, and you're using what tables? Go ahead.
Wait. So John just said something about Hudson.
David Hudson?
David
Yeah,
Hudson.
that's the guy, David Hudson.
And it's Mount St. Helens ash.
It's Mount St. Helens ash that he went and collected. That's what John said.
Ah, okay, that's probably why it was all loaded with the monoatomics, and they pulled right out of the earth where they were still heavily dense and hadn't had a chance to be distributed yet. So that would make sense.
Yeah, which a journalist told me that one years ago. Brenda J. Roberts in Seattle. Doing, you go to Mount St. Helens and collect up this stuff.
Yeah.
So look at monatomic, whatever.
Yeah, so this one right here, I'm making zinc and copper, but I've been able to turn silver, gold, copper, iron, bismuth. I did magnesium once, cobalt, each of them into this white single atom white state that Isaac Newton calls the mercurial state of it. And that when it can also then turn diatomic with an oxide where it turns blue, and then it's becomes like a poison as opposed to the pure plasma energetic state. And that Keshe states that when you break down what he calls nano-coating a metal or a solid, where there's still one covalent bond on the outside of it going into the pure metal, that then it's able to interact with this monoatomic state, which is a plasma state, and then bring in these plasma field energies to it. And from everything I've seen and tested with it and seen others, it seems to be accurate.
Well, what I find interesting about this stuff here is that when you pour these, I guess you say when you pour these monoatomics onto your garden, you ended up with, during that test, of 4.5, 5 foot tall lettuce plants. What? That was nuts. The thing looked like a corn stalk. It was so big.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's commonly known as ormus, I guess.
So their ability to increase the food supply could be tremendous if we figure out effective and rapid ways of producing this material.
I've heard of Ormus.
Ormond, yeah, so have I.
Yeah.
There was a long time ago, my partner, George Hathaway of Toronto, Canada, mentioned he was going to translate a book into English on alchemy, transmutation of materials by a French person by the name of Lebon. And Georgie never kept me on contact on that. And I guess he might have translated that into English. I don't know, that was a long time ago. We should ask
Lebon.
Lebon.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a psychiatrist, a psychologist who went into alchemical reactions and stuff. So I could ask George next time I'm talking to him, communicating with George.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you know, these
That would
guys.
be awesome.
Hmm?
That would be awesome. And another part of this electrolysis process in Isaac Newton's writings is that the white monoatomic is the last state of the metal, but there's 6 other states of metal transmutation, being the crystalline state where metals are actually able to be transmutated from one solid to another, he states. And then from there, there's the red state, which is called the mercury state, the yellow state, which is called the sulfur state. It's like a whitey beige flaky state, which he calls the calcium, the oxidized blue state, which is the metal with an oxide. And I've been able to get the metals into all the colors of these different states. Is that so? That's like the red state right there that I got copper into, blue diatomic, and all of the others. And that it seems like it's actual transmutations that are happening within this electrolysis process of the metals, depending on the voltage I'm putting in and the connection of it, and that the anode side of the metal, pure metal, will go through these different colored states, and what essentially could be actual mercury oxide forming with them, sulfur oxide forming with them, calcium oxide forming with them, and etc. So I'm wondering if you've ever experienced any of the metals in your reactions, if they turn into these different colored states, or outside, what's the word, particulate state, or like essentially where the metal oxidizes or particleizes into these different colors.
There was a few samples which I sold on eBay that John Gamanci bought, that he states has all these colors in it and different materials, multicolors like greens and gold and other weird things in it.
Was the aluminum samples?
No, it was looked like a chunk of copper or brass that morphed into a weird shape.
Wow,
And
that is interesting.
I put them on eBay just to, and what am I gonna do with them? Stare at them or whatever? So I sold them a lot to different people around the world.
Okay, and there's also the uraninite ore.
Yeah.
So I'll tell the story of the uraninite ore.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were on the Gulf of Mexico at the BP oil disaster, Fukushima blew, and we went back up to Minnesota, and a scientist friend from California
Mm-hmm.
bought a chunk of uraninite ore on eBay, and he took and chipped off a piece of it, and he sent it to us to put in front of the baby ray gun. We got these different ray guns, and these are interferometers. And then he took the next chunk right off, he took another chip off that chunk, and he sent it in for it to be analyzed. So he had the baseline analysis before we did our work. And so they shared a face. Okay, so these are the same materials, right? They shared a face. This piece came off and this piece came off. This piece was analyzed and it was U-235. It was enriched uranium. So he had a chunk of enriched uranium that he had gotten off of eBay. And our little chip on it, okay, we had it in front of the ray gun for a month, and we sent it into the same lab, and it was U-232. And it only had like 0.001% of it was U-235.
Wow.
And the radioactivity on it, the half-life is 2 billion years. But we didn't get half, we brought it down to 25% and not 50%. So I don't know, you can debate whether it was 500,000 years or 1 million years that we had progressed the
Decay rate, yeah.
the coming to rest. See, they all want to come to rest. They all have this this extra electron on it that's like a white boy on the dance floor, and he can't get the rhythm, and he keeps hitting everybody. And we come and we grab the white boy in his arm, and we get him to do the rhythm. That's literally what we do with these frequencies, with this field pattern that John has in the atmosphere. It's opposite polarity, and it's a mesh, and it grabs it and it brings it to rest very quickly. And so the uraninite also, uraninite will go through a process as it is becoming less radioactive. It breaks apart into other materials. And so this chunk of uraninite that we had, that was analyzed, had all of those processes contained, all those different materials that the ore would become was existing in the ore. Okay, it didn't. First of all, it was U-235, the bad guy, and then it gets flipped to U-232, and it has all these different materials in it, the daughter product, so to speak. Okay, and it had gold, and I told him it would have gold in it because what all the radioactive elements do is they eventually become lead. And lead has the exact same crystalline structure as gold. So if you compress lead, or if you take the space out, it will become gold. And I believe we had a firmament around the planet where we were like a terrarium, and maybe it was monatomic gold, I don't know, but I believe it was gold. And it did something so that our systems and our harmonics of the matter, of the life on this planet were different. And since something happened, some high voltage shit or whatever, and that gold expanded to lead and expanded out into all the radioactive elements that are on the planet. So that's my theory. So when it comes back with this uraninite that has all the daughter products, and the whole process that takes 2 billion years, and then bam, there's lead and gold.
Yeah, you're
And-
getting all the way down to your full scale decay products.
Right.
That is amazing. And it kind of makes you wonder, is this a temporal effect, or is this actually a totally different phenomena transmuting? Because if we look at Ken Shoulders, that was exotic vacuum objects that he was talking about, which could do this. And Bob Greenyer is pretty well verified. You can transmute almost anything using these exotic vacuum objects. So
Yeah,
you think that's what's happening? Or?
Bob's gonna be here in 2 weeks from now. Bob's
yeah.
coming. And and the EVOs, I don't know if you saw the video of the interview with Ken Shoulders, but I did that interview.
I did. I wish I
Yeah.
had the whole entire thing, but there's only like slices of it still floating around online.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's on my channel, but I
yeah, it is.
yeah, and the thing is that they're the EVO, okay? The EVO is it's like a cavitation. The EVO is like the dots on the yin yang symbol. Okay? And as long as it remains tethered, the EVO has a tremendous amount of energy. But when you cut off that and you're not tethered anymore, it just dissipates. Okay?
Yeah, when it does drop all of its stored energy, all of its stored
Okay.
angular momentum,
Okay.
in this cluster, boom,
Okay.
it's a big amount of energy release.
Yeah, so let's go back,
Yeah.
let's go back to consciousness. As long as we know that we are on that tether and that's what we are, we have the power of everything, right? We're an EVO. But if we get untethered, then we die. We lose it. We don't have it.
You want to drink water?
I can go, well, I'll get you one too.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
So she's got,
so I'm just gonna get some water, but so, all of this, they're repeating patterns. Everything is fractal until you get the penis in there, and then it changes everything.
oh, dear.
Hey Bernie,
Okay.
take over for me for a second. I'm gonna take a dash off for about 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no worries.
I thought it-
If you can see the jar right now, the top is starting to turn yellowy orange. And so that off the anode, so that would be diatomic in what the alchemist called the sulfur state. And
yeah, that's really cool. I was watching it when you guys were talking.
so there's a bit of the monoatomic, the white layer with the hydrogen or Brown's gas, whatever is coming off the cathode side there, and that's what's bubbling up. So it's not the perfect scenario to highlight what I want to show, but I'm still going to do it where I'm now going to pour a little bit of water into it that has a couple drops of my blood in it, and then
I was just gonna ask that. I was just thinking that. I was thinking about the zygote that we got, the amino acids, and add some carbon. And I was just thinking that. I wonder if you put something in there organic, what would happen? And he tells me he's gonna put his blood in.
Yeah.
right? And so what you're gonna see is the the monoatomic and the hydrogen gas, it doesn't go above the level of the water currently. And then as soon as I pour the blood water in, you're going to see it start bubbling and foaming off of the left side, off of that cathode side. And that's what Keshi claimed is it starts reproducing your amino acids and your mRNA off of this reaction. And I checked, and on Wikipedia, it says that the Nazis also discovered this right before World War II, and then no other experiments were done on it.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
so the essentially a monoatomic metal would be a pure resonant state of that metal, correct? Because it's just one single atom of it. It would be vibrating at that specific element's resonant frequency. Is that correct from your understanding?
Pretty much, yeah.
Is that why they got graphene in those COVID shots?
I have no idea, but it's I haven't been received any of that shit. There's something nefarious with it regardless. Like it's just insane that they're forcing the mRNA aspect of it.
I never get back there, never in a million years.
Right, but the guy that I sat on the plane was mRNA.
Right.
You know, so he agreed that the frequencies, that a frequency can change the skin cell, but it back into a stem cell.
Yeah, it
Look
can.
at.
Yeah, it can. Russian research on laser technology and radio waves.
Yeah, there are a few things that I think are equally important to food and remediation of the problem that we have right now, mainly this radiation pollution that we have pretty much everywhere. If we can solve food and we can solve the radiation remediation problem, then we're looking at a much brighter future where maybe we don't all die younger lives, and maybe we aren't all sicker than a dog without knowing why.
Right, okay,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
let me go, that was really cool. We'll let him have the floor for a second, then I'm gonna tell you about something that's hopeful.
Yes.
So now what do you need to get that thing like moving?
So now you'll just watch, and it starts producing white flakes with the hydrogen bubbles or whatever bubbles are coming off the cathode side, and you're going to see it start foaming up above the water line. And supposedly whether it's mRNA, amino acid, whatever it is, it's replicating your own cell structure, that is the resonant frequency of your specific DNA or human cell. And then if you are able to magnify that frequency, you're resetting your cells like exactly like you described, Nancy, with turning it back into a stem cell thing and rejuvenating the field force of your cellular plasmatic matter.
Yeah,
there you go.
I know, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Okay, well, fucking A. So, yeah. All right, so now we know, and we can actually find out what that frequency is, and we got the ability to send across the whole planet. Way cool. Okay.
Speaking of frequencies, may I ask a question? I've been wondering this too for a while, especially with the ray guns. What frequency ranges are you pumping into these things? If you have any.
Well, we got it online on John's SlideShare. It's got the whole.
Okay. I do remember seeing that. Yeah, I think I had issues finding those files on the SlideShare, but everything used to be up there. I swear some stuff has disappeared.
Okay,
And
so
the U.S. Navy keeps the cosmic rays at bay for using ELF and BLF radio signals. That was made mainstream media a couple of years ago. Keep the cosmic rays away from the Earth, or some of them.
okay,
Protect the bubble.
we're on a fault line here on purpose. Literally, you walk out parking lot and you walk over 10 feet and there's a fault line. That's the
Yeah.
creek, right?
Oh man, you could tap so much power from the telluric currents just
Oh,
because.
yeah, and right there, across that fault line, another 10 feet, 20 feet is a railroad line.
Oh man, you couldn't have a better setup for your super sized ground and tapping your telluric energy. That's beautiful.
Yes, sir.
And we're in a monolithic dome. A monolithic dome is made out of rebar. It's concrete and rebar, and we hooked up to the rebar, the dome, the big ray gun, which is about 15, 20 feet away.
Yeah, about,
And
20 feet.
and John found a standing wave in between the two. So we're
Yeah, so then short out the transmitter.
Well, I gotta know now. I'm wondering, how did you find the standing wave? Did you use a meter, or did you just use your own body's detection mechanism?
I do simple detection system or an oscilloscope,
Oh, okay.
spectrum analyzer sometimes.
or he takes
Yeah,
a radio. He likes to take a AM FM radio. And he goes around and finds stuff in the
That's a
sky.
handy tool I have because it tells you things you can't see or hear. I use it for fixing old vintage electronic stuff too. When I tap tubes, the radio will do something. That little handheld radio.
Okay, so
I feel like a doctor repairing all these patients.
It's a
so
very
um,
sorry,
so-
go ahead. Man.
from the Gulf,
Surgery.
so from the Gulf of Mexico, we went up to, and you guys know what happened in the Gulf of Mexico, right? You know, with the BP oil
Yeah,
disaster.
huge oil problems, and you guys spent quite a bit of time out there remediating a lot of that.
Yeah, and that's when Fuki blew. And there's a really cool video of us right after that when we interacted with the frequencies, and we shot it in infrared. And you can see the ground. We had our arms joined like this, and it suddenly was like one board. You couldn't see a difference. It was like one board, and then the ground disappeared underneath us. And
Disappeared?
yeah.
Like, what did you see with your eyes? I mean, when you say it disappeared, what did it look like?
It looked like the ground. These are the thing is that the camera is a radio receiver, and what was going on is that we were interacting with the field, that we were standing right in front of all the equipment and the ray gun that we had there, and it was like our intent, and we were like in with the frequencies. And you can see it looks like the ground disappears because the frequencies get so dense. So it's like we're in this sea all of a sudden of frequencies, and you can no longer tell that there's a ground underneath us.
That's incredible. Did you say you got this on video though?
Yeah, it's posted on, I think it's on my channel, I'm pretty sure.
I've got to
Okay.
go surfing your channel and see if I can find that. I'll tell you, we should definitely bring that one up during the live stream too, and show that video. So, because that's an amazing event.
And then I went
Yeah.
down on the ground and I just pulled the energy up through my body. And as I came up, I pulled up this energy, and you can see it coming out like a ball out of my mouth.
Wow, that's awesome. I've got to see that.
Yeah. Good video.
So, I mean, the thing is that we don't, we are in very wonderful, fantastic, great machines. Thank you for, letting me spend some time here, God, me, whatever. But we're very, very, very limited in actually understanding with this body, we only have one sense, that's touch, whatever, and that's the only sense there is in the universe. And so we've got eyes that we get touched in light frequencies, we got audio that gets touched in our ears, you've got pressure on their skin, you have all this touch that then we have to figure out what the fuck this place is. And that's what our brain tells us. And then we decide, yeah, this is a pink lighter. Okay, so,
Oh, man, I remember seeing stuff as a baby and looking out, for the first time at the world and being absolutely and utterly confused. I
Right.
have, strange little pieces of memories where my brain is like, well, what is that? How big is
Right.
that thing? Do I even know?
Right.
It's fascinating in those first few months.
You see what's, cat. Well, I mean, real typicals, we had a boxer dog that went crazy at the cows. And we used to call them big dogs. And we could just say big dogs. And our dog would go nuts looking for the cows, and but then we had little dogs too, and she played with little dogs. And so I mean, this boxer dog only knew the cows were dogs because we told the boxer dog that this was a dog. So they believed it was a dog.
Yeah,
Okay, so
big dog.
we just have to, who the fuck is telling us shit? Because we can't believe everything somebody tells us because they may call you a big asshole or something, and I don't believe that. So,
John, you're a big asshole.
oh wow, no, you're a big dog, right?
A big dog, big stupid nut.
Yeah. Something happened. Who's there? Is anybody there? Oh, somebody's over
We're still
there.
here.
Sorry, I muted myself so it wouldn't disrupt the audio.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, we can all see you. Bernie's here. I'm here.
We're
Okay.
listening.
Yeah, so like I look at your bottles of goopy shit, and I think what it could be, like when I put that orb speaker thing I told you about, I stuck it in a tank with some of those feeder goldfish, that die real soon. And then I had a control tank in another area of the building. And I ran the tones, that was through, I was getting a feedback, of course, to the from the RF that was hooked up to. But anyway, so that was in the water. And you could see these little tiny bubbles come up that were being created by the speaker that was vibrating the water, right? And so that group of fish after 2 days didn't want to eat anymore. And so, I put the food and they wouldn't go after the food. The other group was eating and shitting, and I had to clean the tank out like every few days. It was really nasty. And these guys weren't eating, they were growing. And I had this little zygote from the bubbles on top that was like forming these really cool, geometric patterns and stuff on top. So when I saw your shit, that's what I thought of. I was thinking maybe I could get some amino acids and high voltage and some carbon in there and we could get something going. And then he gets the blood in there and I thought, wow, this is so cool.
Dr. Von Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm fascinated with, would want to try, is then adding some of these ormus or monoatomic, whatever it is, states of metal into your crystal battery mixture.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And see if it increases it, as well as potentially and theoretically, if this is the amino acid mRNA of my cells being recreated up here, am I then putting in that field, energy field, into that same crystal battery and essentially making that next step of what you're saying of it being a bio battery and energetic that way?
Well, yeah, and then you gotta talk to them to organize, that. So we gotta have our our negative and positive pickups, all that kind of stuff going on. So yeah, I was like when you were talking, it was like I was hearing it before he said it. It's like yeah.
Like, yeah.
Being on the same wavelength.
Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, I think so. I think that's very viable. So then you go, what are you gonna do with these guys? And do we go to the iPhone or do we stay on the electric typewriter? Because this, what he's saying here, is the iPhone. you know, it's,
Well, it's going to be trying and experimenting with all of them going forward, and then comparing the different reactions and advancing each process or each I guess product for different specific needs and purposes as it
right.
develops.
I mean, like, yeah, we could show people how to get their canning jars together and some, you know, like extension cord or something, and how to jerry rig this shit together, and they could make it. But, and that's cool. I think that has to, but this is definitely, this is definitely gonna be where they'll say, I'll trade you. I don't wanna do that. Okay,
Exactly.
yeah,
So I think the next step would us be doing this again, only with the intent of then like live streaming it. And if you guys can have even like 1 or 2 of your power cells that you built, and we'll make sure to have Charlie on with the ones he built, and me and Jeremiah maybe can get the supplies needed to make them. That we'll make 1 or a couple each during the stream, and then we'll advertise it ahead of time, because I know of several other people that have made the cells and done videos on them, so that they'll be in the community in the like live stream room at the time that we do it, and do a recording of us making it, and you guys being able to answer questions as well as tell your story with it a bit one more time.
yeah, so are you?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's be fine, but are you buying Rochelle salts, or are you making it with cream and tartar and baking soda?
I suppose you could try both, hey?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a real simple formula. It's 2 parts of cream and tartar to 1 part of baking soda. Okay. And then it is a 1/2 part Epsom salts.
Yeah, and that's nice too. You got your magnesium sulfate right away with Epsom
Right,
salt. So there you have
right.
your magnesium transport mechanism.
Right, and then I just cook that up. I've got a little pot that I do it on, and I put in just a few drops of water, just enough so that it starts to bubble and it starts to activate, and all of that water is going to get burned off, evaporated. And if I want to make taffy, you know, the putty stuff, it's an equal amount as the Epsom salt of white sugar.
Ah, yeah, that was the other question. That was actually the last one. This is the putty battery formula. So I guess that's it. Just add the sugar.
Right, the same amount as the Epsom salt.
Oh, my
And-
buddy's gonna be very happy to know what that last ingredient was. He's been wanting to know that for a while.
Yeah,
Thanks.
And-
So thanks for him.
okay, and you still gotta watch it, you know, you want, with the putty stuff, you still want the water that you've added in to boil off. You want that to evaporate, and you want to be left with the putty. You might get, you know, it's kind of this tricky little way, you know, you've got to just play with it for a while. You might have something that's got water in it, and you might have something that you have cooked too far, and you end up with, you know, back into the crystalline stage like a lollipop. So it's, you know, just you work with, I've made so many fucking thousands of these things that it's, you just get to know at what state, and then that's it. You can, sometimes I'll take it a spoonful out, and I had a stainless steel table, and I just drop it on there to see if it'll cool real quick on the metal, and then to see if it's pliable, you know, where I'm at as far as, oh, this is just awful. I don't know if you're recording this too. I don't know if I should.
Well,
save it.
not necessarily. We don't have to show any particular thing. It's just there so we can actually remember going back over this later, like all the amazing things that we're talking
Ever
about.
have something
You don't lose them.
between your fingers when you've been playing with yourself? Okay, that's that. You don't want it to be like that. You want it to be thicker. Okay, so this, you dop it on the table. It's, you know, it's cold. You go like this, and you go, oh no, that's not good.
That's not good, Captain.
Okay, that is, no.
Honey, not cream.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah, not cream. but
Yeah,
I am
you wanted
working
to
on
get to be like a, you know, like one of those really, you know, those nice caramely, you know, inside of a caramel candy bar that's just nice and soft, but it doesn't stick to your teeth. That kind of thing.
softness is
Right.
given.
And at that point, you know, it's just take it off and you can work, and I poured it into a jar and just cover it, and days later I can come back and it got just the right consistency and I can work with it. Whereas with John's original, you hit that one point and you gotta pour it and you gotta make it right there. And it'll set up. Okay, when you got the putty, you can mess around with it.
That does make it a lot nicer and easier to work with, I think.
Right, and you can very, very carefully apply heat and get it thinner so you can pour it. So it's just, you know, these little, I had it at a certain viscosity where we could actually spray it onto parts.
Wow. Would you use like a little airbrush kind of thing for that, or?
No, I just was messing around with a sprayer thing, you know, spray.
Oh, like
bottle.
one of those pump action sprayers?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the thumb action plunger sprayers.
Right, so you can get it to that. It has to be at a certain temperature so that it has a thinner viscosity. But then it sprays on and it's a putty and you clamp the stuff together. And I mean, this we will get to that point with this. But I like looking at this crazy, you know, Frankenstein shit in these mason jars. That sounds really fun. You know, that's just.
Cooking up good recipes.
I mean, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, now, how do we get the power out of there? You know, it's, and how do we, it's like, Mobius. You know, I made Mobius power cells too, and those were fascinating. Maybe if we had a Mobius strip in there. Something
Right?
like getting around in that. I wonder what that would be like.
And like, what were the original batteries called made out of jars?
Leyden jars?
Leyden jars, right? So it's like, I want to try making Leyden jars with this material.
Yeah, here's like an extracted version of that same stuff. Now this is mainly gold and platinum and palladium, but there's a lot of different things in it, and I'll just hook it up to the magic wand here, and you can actually see what happens to this powder on the inside. It's pretty damn interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see, let me get it. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I put it on the wrong end. There we go. Here we go. Let me see if I can get this.
You're just a little guy. Can you be a big guy?
Yeah, you can see the stuff really moving around on the inside, like it's going kind of nuts.
Oh, yeah.
There.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Freaked out my camera, sorry.
Oh dear, what happened? I just did something.
That wasn't you, that was me. I'm using a 130,000 volt handheld high voltage wand. I mean, so
cool.
it's but anyways, it'll make this stuff fly around like crazy. It's highly electrostatically responsive. It generates its own little field fluctuations as it's moving around. Yeah, the stuff definitely has unique electrical properties in addition to its ability to make plants grow really freaking big, and you know, the variety of other things that it can do.
awesome, man. That's cool.
Well, yeah. Oh,
Last night, Nancy, you were mentioning that you guys and John was doing some experiments towards working with portals or developing portal technology.
Yes, I almost forgot about that.
Well, John has opened portals before, and if you look at I posted the Ludwig.
Dr. Elizabeth.
Dr. Ludwig, and I might even have a clip I put up. And the clip is when I have Final Cut Pro 6. That's what Star Trek used, and I have not been able to find a good editing. I mean, I'm going to get into M3 here in Apple, and the software isn't what I want it to be, because in that software I can go in and I can go see the camera's a radio receiver, and so all this information is there that's in that file, but they got filters on it. So I do these things to like pull the filters off of the file to see what's happening there. You know, I go to a different information field, so to speak. And so there's a section where something flies up and the pendulum starts swinging, and then the pendulum disappears, and then it comes back and reappears. And I got in there really tight, and I identified a slit that the pendulum was going through.
That's awesome. And that actually brings me to a question that I have had in my head, which was, we know about with the original early Hutchinson experiments, particularly a video of this piece of aluminum bar. I think it was aluminum bar on a plywood board. It was one of the thin ones. I would say, just from the looks of it, it looked like maybe 3/8 inch wide by about maybe 5 or 6 inches long. It kind of bent itself into a curved up shape, and as it's rocking back and forth like this, we can see it phasing in and out. And I was wondering, we know about the Van de Graaff, we know about the Tesla coils. What was there another piece of critical equipment that was part of that system to give you your really high frequency RF?
I was using high frequency, our old radar generators and things.
It was a radar generator, and what kind of tube did you hook it up to, or what kind of radar transmissions structure did you hook it up to?
Basically a feed horn to get the transmission out of it.
Okay, so you're just literally pumping just conventional RF beaming using an amplifier.
Yeah, it was just above the hydrogen line. It was an old radar test set called device 15 by 17, a huge device, vacuum tube, but it didn't do its job.
So,
and that sample was analyzed by the Canadian government, and they wrote the report. It was semi-transparent.
Yeah, I was so amazed by that video.
okay, so you want to know about portals? I got a whole list.
Yeah, I had a number of.
Yes.
I can start, you can finish. Okay, these are different portals. I don't know if that was a portal in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
But we were on Apalachicola Bay, which is on the Gulf of Mexico. And the creek was over here and the bay was over here.
Right.
And we were shooting, we had just basically gotten set up and shooting this, and we had a bunch of people come over, and everybody just, and I'm scanning with the camera. I've got a TV camera. I was a TV person at its show in Minnesota. So I had my TV camera panning across, and all these people are talking, and all of a sudden there's all this, what is that? What's that out there? What's out there? And I'm shooting right towards it, but the frame freezes before you to the spot where I was before. So I'm on that frame, but you can hear the audio of these people talking. And so I continued panning. And as soon as I got off that area where everybody's talking about, the camera started again. What was happening out there was it looked like something had come down on the water and went flat, and there's like this standing weight. Literally, the water was just standing straight up.
Yeah, I got ready.
All across the bay.
Ready to run up the hill.
Boom. It was just standing.
Dang.
Yeah, and you got that? You got it? And I go back, and what the fuck? As soon as I hit that with the camera, it froze. It would not record, and I came onto the other side. So, but there is a video, and I posted it, and it was our time and report on Indian Creek. I think it was Indian Creek.
Yeah, Indian Creek.
Yeah, there's stuff happening there. There was that time that shit came in, and the wind was just howling, and then right where we were, it stopped, and it was completely calm on the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a creek, and right where the wind's just boom, and you see the trees are going, and I'm videotaping this. The trees are going really strong here. Here's the equipment, and here the trees are absolutely calm.
Yeah.
And then there's that funny guy or portal or whatever you want to call it, who was on the dock.
Yeah.
That really weird entity that appeared.
Oh, yeah. That's, nobody uploaded that.
Yeah, and
That
and,
sounds interesting.
I had photos of it before, way back in the 80s.
I mean, I was running all over the place going, John, what's that? What's that? And he goes, oh, that's normal.
Yeah,
that's
you
normal.
did. Into
That's
that.
normal.
And then there's one day he picked up the camera, and and John's not good at camera work,
No.
but so I slowed it down and I saw what he was looking, and it was this wild stuff that was coming out of the creek. And it was all these geometric patterns and things that were just forming right there
Yeah.
on top of the creek. And that creek had been hit really bad with the oil, and it was dead, and the birds were gone. And we set up there, and within days, I got videotapes of the birds coming back, and the fish started coming back in. And the last night we were there, we left because of Fukushima. We needed to get back to Minnesota and work on stuff. But that last night, I thought, what the hell? I heard this noise in the creek. We stayed right next to the creek, and I grabbed my camera, and here there were more fish in the creek than water.
That's
Wow.
pretty.
Yeah,
I don't know.
and it looked like the day before I videotaped and stuff, and there were just these absolutely huge swarms of minnows. I mean, millions and millions of, and then the locals were all just excited down there grabbing minnows and stuff. They'd never seen anything like this. And yeah, I remember all that. And the shrimp came back in because we had the thumper. We had
Wow.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, the shrimp just came swarming in too. So,
How many cycles per second?
yeah,
One,
yeah,
two
yeah.
cycles per second.
Yeah, and we even had that otter come up, and it was just the whole, and the guy who owned the place just walked out, and he was just scratching his head, and he just couldn't believe it. He'd never seen his place this nice, and we were in the middle of this catastrophe, and we were having hurricanes would come by, and they would go bounce right around us. And Dutch Sense even, I don't know if you know Dutch Sense on YouTube.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we met up with him on the way back, and he had done a report that there's something happening right there where we were, where it was the reverse of what he was seeing, where there were going to be these problems with the weather, and what he saw with us was reverse. Because I don't know what that is, but I'm going to call it that there's something going on down there, and it was us. We were bouncing the weather around us, and we've done that when we went back to Minnesota, and there was we were right off the highway, and we set up there. We got things going back in Minnesota, and the tornado season started. And right early on, the highway was maybe a mile from our place. It was like a wall right along the highway. The tornado absolutely devastated one side of the highway, and there was a wall. It wouldn't come over to our side, and that eventually got a little bit bigger. So we were out, maybe 20 miles from us, and the news in the Twin Cities, the weather reports started calling it the St. Cloud effect, because we live right north of St. Cloud, Minnesota, and they referred to that every time a storm came across the Dakotas and came down and was going to come hitting on the Twin Cities, that it would hit the St. Cloud and it would disperse everything. They were these huge storms, red on the, and then all of a sudden it was just light green, light rain, 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 all the way, and they called that was the summer, the St. Cloud effect. And that winter, now our normal winters where I lived was 20, 30 below zero. I mean, that would happen repeatedly during the winter. We had green grass on our lawn all winter long.
What? That's bonkers. Wow.
Yep, and we had
Yeah.
fog when people were getting all hit with snow and everything. We had fog.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely wild. I mean, that takes all the Cloudbuster stories and makes them sound like nothing.
And so when we set up, and then we lived on the lake. And a couple of times it flooded, and we were in the lake, but we have sandbank and we're in the lake. But
Wow.
we spent the winter there from coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, and I'm sure I've got that one loaded. And I showed it to Dr. Rauscher, and she couldn't figure it out. She was just, yeah. And so we had the ray gun set up, and it was going across the lake, and we had it set up to bounce off of the Great Lakes and use them as a speaker to come back. And then there's a border town up there that started accusing the American town across with noise pollution.
That's the town I went to.
Oh man, was this the large ray gun, the biggest one?
The-
Was this the
the what?
biggest ray gun that you guys had?
No, the biggest one has been in Oregon, but so we had that happening. We had that when we came up from the Gulf of Mexico. The equipment, we use this cargo container basically as a cargo trailer as a feed horn,
Mhm.
and it was resonating with the frequencies. And Dutch Sense we were in touch with, and he was saying, hey, you guys got really bad weather coming up, blah 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 blah. And we're like, we haven't seen any bad weather, but
No.
we've seen a hell of a lot of really rundown farms and barns. Like, these people don't take care of their shit out here. We actually drove in a bubble through 160 tornadoes.
Whoa.
Yeah,
That was quite the
Tornadoes.
night.
I mean, that must have been one crazy, insane supercell storm.
yeah.
Or
And
series of storms.
we stopped. Remember, we stopped
Yeah.
and went to a restaurant, and I'm in the bathroom. The lights go out, and I'm like, who the fuck is doing this kind of shit?
Oh, I
And this
remember
is
that.
this is like high school shit, right?
I took a video of that
And
today
here-
inside there.
A tornado had come down just down the road, like 5 miles down the road ahead of us. We had stopped.
Yeah.
And the tornado comes down.
Wow.
I think I did film a little bit of that. I was filming a bullet hole through the window or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, a bullet hole or something. I don't know what the.
And then the big portal that John did. The big portal was when he was in a building in North Vancouver, was it? The insurance guy.
And sure, oh, that was with Alexander
Where were
Sherishevsky
you?
and George Lissitate. That was in Burnaby, British Columbia. Canada.
Burnaby. And they were in a building, and next to the building was like
Hospital.
a hospital. On the other side of the building was a grocery store or something.
Called ADA Food
Yeah.
Market.
So there's a grocery store on one side, a hospital on the other side.
Yep.
Their buildings in the middle.
Yeah.
And the insurance agent was supposed to come out to, give them a quote on insuring the building. Never showed up. And they were in the middle of their experiments and stuff. Next day, give the insurance guy a call and say, why didn't you show up? We waited all day for you. And he said, what are you talking about? He said, I was there. The insurance guy was there, and he said, we don't insure empty lots. And the guy said, this is an empty lot. This is a building. And the
Oh,
insurance guy said, this is the address I went to. There's a hospital on one side. There's a grocery store on the other side, and there's an empty lot in the middle.
Right.
What? Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, Alexander will verify that. We're supposed to get together someday again. He likes all that kind of stuff. And George, well, he took the power cell and went off and made the field stress detector, made millions of dollars. But anyway, it's a long story.
Yeah, John.
I almost wonder if that empty lot was not a question of where did it go, but when did it go?
Oh, yeah, I mean, that
No,
whole
no,
thing,
we had-
that thing went under debate with the lawyers in Supreme Court of British Columbia. Because that whole thing was turned into a court case.
Oh, and we had some crazy stuff happening with the Johnny tubes. We had a couple places where they were installed by private citizens.
Yeah.
And I went on,
Crazy
I
stuff.
went on Google Earth and I'm looking for, their location where they're gonna be, and just kind of seeing where it's gonna be and stuff, right? So I got that. And so then they install it. And just for shits and giggles, I went back on the time machine on Google Earth, and the whole fucking thing, like 30 years ago, had totally different streets.
I love that kind of stuff.
I mean, how could that be that 30 years?
Yeah, how could that be? That is really interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I've had it happen to me one time for a fraction of a second. I was living in Germany for 2 years. In
and
Munich, with the end gas at the time, we're having a lunch. And a fraction of just a tiny piece of a second, the whole thing went to Nazi Germany to snap back the president. So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
kind of freaked me out.
Yeah, and we had this thing where we would go to the TV station I was at that was in the Twin Cities in White Bear Lake.
Yeah.
And it was a 90-minute drive home. And I was going to stop on the way to see my daughter. I said, no, I called her, no, it's too long of a drive.
And
So I had an actual stamp on my phone as when that phone call was, right? And it was 90 minutes from her house to my house. And we went by the nuclear power plant.
Yep.
Was I talking to my mom or something then?
I think you're talking to your mom.
Yeah, that's crazy stuff. So we went by the nuclear power plant, and this is before Fukushima. This was before the BP oil disaster, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And suddenly we're past my exit that I normally take to get home, because then I have to go north from that highway. And I'm like, what the hell? And I look at my phone and the time on it, and it's only been like 25, 30 minutes. And I've gone like, what would it taken 70 minutes?
Wow, and you guys had this is the trailer set up with the transmitters running inside of it. Is that what you guys were running? Was this with the trailer?
No, this was just John and I. We'd just gotten off of a TV show. And
You're just driving with nothing special running at all.
nothing special. I called my daughter and I said, you won't believe where I am, because then I had to go through St. Cloud itself instead of taking the first exit and getting to my house. And I said, you won't believe where I am. I'm in St. Cloud. She goes, well, yeah, you were going to St. Cloud. That St. Cloud is next to where I lived in Rice. And I said, no, I just talked to you 30 minutes ago. And I was by your house. Now I'm in St. Cloud. That takes over an hour to get there. I just talked to you 30 minutes ago. I'm in St. Cloud. How can this be?
These things do happen though.
Yeah, well, we were messing around with power cells and stuff at that time.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is.
I've had things vanish and reappear and then vanish for good. I don't know where they go.
Yeah, well, we also,
Some of it's, I think, on video.
we were gonna do an Atlas Shrugged at that time. We were planning on grabbing Ken Shoulders and Brian O'Leary was still alive, and we were gonna grab a bunch of these people, get off on an island and get the fuck away from everybody and put up a force field. And I mean, we were actively pursuing that. And then BP blew up.
Yeah.
And then John went back because he has to do this full ring, merry-go-round thing where he has to go up to Canada and come back and every 6 months, but that's been a while since he's done that. But he was going back to his lab to do that, and a friend there was, making trouble with the government with him being in the United States. So he went back to Vancouver.
Yeah.
Then I went and got it, and then we did those experiments. And you want to get frightened. All the experiments that we did with the water, with testing to see if we could remediate the oil in the water. John was naked during the whole time, and I was doing these.
Oh, well, what do you
Oh,
do?
man.
I'm trying to video the experiment, and John keeps revealing himself.
Oh my goodness, John, you silly bastard, revealing yourself now, Major. You should get a step up a lap, old boy,
So-
Revealing yourself is a little uncanny.
And then they've got you had that camcorder where you videotaped the portal right in your lab. What was that, 1980 something or whatever it was?
That was, George Hathaway gave it, the camera was 80, wow, early 80s,
And you had some entity that kept coming and visiting you,
yeah.
Harry, whatever you call
What
it.
was this entity like? I mean, did you have the ability to see it, detect it? Was it messing with the equipment? Any description of this, whatever it was?
Bloody right, Major.
So all the above, pretty much.
They're like, well, I gotta keep a step up a lap,
They don't know the they don't know the story about. So there was like this
What?
big court battle thing
Oh.
and somebody trying to take John's lab, and then the Canadian government said they could, as a matter of national security and couldn't have it, and all this kind of shit was going on, right?
Well, yeah, the judge said that all parties can attend in the lab.
Okay, and so then you were actually packing up equipment, right? And you had a big transformer on the back of a truck, right?
That, you're speaking of the levitating transformer
Right.
that crashed on George?
Great, that was during that time, you were moving your lab equipment.
No, I was in Germany at the time and the lawyers kept us informed. Roland, Brito,
You weren't even there when it levitated?
no,
Oh my God, so they were, so
they were firing it up and getting weird things, Alex.
okay, and so this transformer's on a truck and this guy's trying to take John's shit.
Yeah,
And the transformer levitated off the truck and slammed the guy.
that was George Lissacase, who was in hospital for 3 months over that incident. The lawyers would write in facts where I was in Munich, saying in the faxes, which I copied all of them, that this is becoming unbelievable what's going on in that lab.
Yeah,
That was Thomas Hudson, the lawyer, and another lawyer, Kowalski and Company.
okay, so there's a lot of stories.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there's a lot of things that are, I mean, like we had some kind of crystal,
I think,
no, this crystal that appeared on the table just the last week.
oh, yeah, yeah.
This, I'm looking for, what was I looking for? I was looking for something.
Yeah,
And I'm just trying to, okay, where is this? Where is this? And I had a bunch of papers on the table and I kind of moved the papers away and there's this big crystal thing sitting there, just shining like crazy, sparkling like crazy. And I went, where the hell did that come from? And picked it up and inside it was just, different colors as you go in the different lights. And it's a perfect pyramid on one side and it's got a pentagon on the other side and all these other crystals in it. And it just appeared. And then we talked to people that have come to the lab, nobody dropped off a rock. So that thing just happened.
You have that thing sitting around there? I mean, I'm guessing you don't have that with you. It's probably back in the other lab.
Maybe I got it here, I can show it to you.
Wow, yeah, that would be really, I'm super curious to see what this thing looks like. Because if it materialized out of nowhere, I'm kind of wondering,
Like,
like,
is
what
this
is
time
this?
crystal, like opening up portals, and like the best part of everything, you guys, like every story you've just said, it's like it's verified other stories of people that have come on and told their experiences of connecting these different like crazy Van de Graaff generator devices with a whole set of like coils or different frequencies or energy inputs, and like I have parallel corresponding stories pretty much of similar experiences as everything you guys have just listed off.
We had the odd pink experiment. That involved a lot of people in Vancouver. Dilithium crystals given to me by William Warren of Fort Worth, Texas. It got so bad it made even into the New Westminster Police Department.
What happened with that experiment? Because I've heard about you having gotten something that was, I guess they were calling it dilithium, whatever the heck it was. And I was curious, what was that stuff? Oh wow, that thing? That is really interesting. That just appeared?
That appeared in
That
my lab.
So it's got a perfect pyramid here, four-sided pyramid on this
I
side.
see it.
And then it's pentagon on this side.
It almost looks like a bismuth composition.
I know, I was thinking that. And we have, I didn't have any bismuth sitting on, but we've transmutated bismuth with John's
yeah.
equipment.
Yeah.
It almost looks that way, but it doesn't quite have it. I mean, bismuth is when it does that, it's more of a.
Yeah, it's more
square.
transparent and like a salt-like crystal or transparent crystal.
It's transmitting.
Fascinating.
It's John checked it. It's transmitting.
So you're able to stick this thing next to like a spectrum analyzer antenna and actually pick up an emission from it?
No, I put it on a regular radio antenna.
Oh,
And-
you stuck it on the antenna. Okay.
And I personally can feel it vibrating.
Wow.
I picked up some very strong, weird signals where signals should not exist.
Is it magnetic? Is it magnetic? That thing? That piece of rock?
Maybe we tried to get a magnet?
Somewhere.
Where do we have a magnet?
Because if it is vibrating in your hands, I'm wondering if you could bring a magnet close to it and feel the magnet vibrating too.
Good idea.
That'd be really interesting to know.
Yeah, it's just really weird. But
If it is generating a magnetic field, I mean, that's tappable power right there. That's power that's just begging to be utilized.
and it's got like, it looks like it's rust on it.
It does. I seen that too. I was noticing, and you got what looks kind of like pyrite. It looks like rust. Definitely different metal, metallic and oxide deposits. But there's a lot of other colors in there, which it would just be totally stabbing in the dark to guess what they were. But it looks like it's got quite a few minerals and quite a few.
And it's not very heavy.
Oh.
I mean, like relative to lead or gold, it's not very heavy.
That is
there's,
interesting.
A relationship between the signals I caught on iPad
Let me see.
on the radio receiver.
I just want to change the lighting in here.
Can you elaborate a bit on during the APEC
It is-
conversation we originally had on
That's
the
beautiful.
setup you used to record and measure like the sound frequencies of certain matter and like if it's the resonant frequency, or do you remember that part, Nancy?
Oh. Okay. I thought you were asking John a question, so I wasn't paying
Oh, the
attention.
both of you actually.
What was the question? Because I wasn't paying attention because I thought you were asking John.
Yeah, and to John, specifically, when what setup you use to record and capture the resonant frequencies or like the mass frequencies of objects or elements.
Ellen?
Or like it was, you had like two speakers hooked up to a recording device or of some sort, and on opposite ends of the spectrum or something, like one on. I'm gonna have to rewatch the part.
Remember that one.
So when we were installing the Johnny tubes, you can take a clip and, okay, like if you've got a plug into your microphone, right? And you cut that wire and then you hook up a clip onto it, right? So now whatever vibrates your clip is going to be picked up as sound waves by, this is why I like Final Cut Pro. I can go down to negative 60 decibels. And so when we made these Johnny tubes, I was able to clip onto the Johnny tubes and record the negative 60 decibels that was coming off. Okay, that was being generated by the Johnny tubes. And so I knew what that pattern was, what that sound was like. And when we went to install these, we checked the tree first, because the tree has its own broadcast that it's doing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we checked the tree, recorded that, and then we put the Johnny tubes, attached them to the system. It's with a Lukowski coil, you know, and okay, and then grounded it and hooked the other end up on the coil. And then we had those coils, we made like an array around, so there'd be like 5 or 6 or 7, how many trees around that would also be picking it up and broadcasting it. But the first one we would get done, and we would check to make sure that that signal was now being carried by the tree by then recording what the tree was broadcasting after it was hooked up. So so then what we would get all the time was that we would have the signal of the Johnny tube now added on to the signal that the tree has already broadcasting. And those are pine trees that do that. You've got to have the lethal. So it's an old ham radio trick.
Yeah.
To use the trees as an antenna.
Yep.
Yeah, it is a rather old trick too. I've read several patents that use trees as energy receivers for picking up a lot of atmospheric energy, and also some which try to tap the human residents, because they're picking that up too from the ion fluctuation traveling around the Earth's atmosphere. So there's a lot of ways that trees can be used to transmit and receive, because they are effectively a fractal breakout antenna. They're pretty much tapping every single frequency from the highest and the tiniest little twig to the largest, going all the way into the ground at Earth's frequency and below. So they're really wonderful for that.
Oh, yeah.
I had a buddy who actually built small tree antennas, made them look just like trees, measured the wires, look at the fractal nature of the golden ratio. He attached them like that, and he had these incredibly wideband receivers that had surprisingly high gain, built out of nothing but 2 lengths of copper wire and sort of a tree-like fractal pattern.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I use them as antennas for transmitting and receiving.
You gonna go make some smokes?
Yeah, I'm gonna be back in about 5 minutes.
So you're gonna be stuck with me. So there's this thing about the dodecahedron.
Right back.
And I don't know if you guys have gotten into that with any of the ancient writings, ancient religions.
I have quite a bit, actually.
Sacred geometry aspects of the fractal nature of the universe, I guess, essentially.
Yeah, that's that XX thing. That's the XX, like my body is the original female body on the planet. It's the original XX. It's a fractal, okay? But the influence of the Y is what changes the fractal. So the dodecahedron, is, you've got the 12-sided and the 12 apostles, and you have another group that believes that the the original energy split up into 12 points, and one of them was the Gaia Sophia story, where you know, they went out to create the universe, these 12 points. And Gaia decides to make a place where she's going to be the life itself. But there's this story about going out to Orion, that's where this human potential or stuff was, and she's electrically, magnetically attracted to it, grabs it, and if you know much about motion, you're going to have a weight behind you, and it's all of her children, it's all the fractals, right? And so she rolls into this planet. So we've got the fractals like the oak trees, and we have the potentials, which are, you know, like the phallic symbols, the pine trees, the male. The male didn't exist. It was all female. It was all fractal. So, I mean, and it makes sense in physics is if you're considering that there was a potential of everything, voltage, static electricity, you'll use whatever term you want to it, thought, any thought that's actually, it's ever possible. And it's in complete equilibrium with nothing, no possibility. But you've got an enigma, you got a problem, because motion cannot exist as a potential. And so the firstborn had to die and be resurrected, that it being motion. And that concept of the death and resurrection comes from a group that this Nazarene dude was part of, that people call him Jesus, and he was a master scene in the inner circle of this group, that I have a writing on a 24-foot long whiteboard that talks about how the whole 3D came into existence. And if you can get past religion and look at what the words have the ability to be, like it talks about everything is created by the law. Well, law is the relationship of one thing to another. Harmonics is the relationship of one thing to another. And there's a statement in there that nothing exists that is created absent the law. So things exist that aren't created. There's a potential that exists that hasn't been created. So the creation has to happen through these harmonics.
Yeah, and the proof of that is right there in the Schwinger effect. You reach the Schwinger limit, put enough RF energy into a given volume of space, 1022 kiloelectron volts to be specific, and all of a sudden out of space pops matter, physical, real matter, an electron and a positron. So
Right.
it's just potential waiting to happen.
Right. So when you look at the Garden of Eden is the story that maybe, you know, you guys might have some Christian background. I read the Bible, you know, forward, backwards. I used to teach this stuff. And then I figured out where the information was coming from and how the real information had been manipulated. And so the document that people call the Word of God, the Bible, is actually a political document. And I got into reading the actual writings prior to the Bible. So from there comes this, wow, these guys knew what the fuck what was going on. I knew these were the ultimate scientists. And if you listen and you read the words and try to understand what they're saying from a physics standpoint, it's absolutely perfect. They were so far more advanced than we are today. It just is like sucks that we're so dumb. So
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then we have crazy stories going through history, like the Dogons having basically a description of Atomos. They had various descriptions of the structure of atoms, and this whole idea that they were actually made of these little particles made of something else. And like, where did this tribe, completely isolated from everybody else, somewhere on the plains of Africa, possibly get information about things extending to quantum physics? And
yeah. Well, the Jesus was using quantum physics. They had their whole group. They had taken over the city of Antioch had 100,000 people there, and Rome was falling, and Constantine says, well, fuck this shit, I'm gonna take over this new group, and I'm gonna institute a tithe, and then I'll get the tax, you see? And he took his 60 pagan priests, and he made them bishops of the church, and he collected up all this shit, but the Essenes hid it. Those are the Dead Sea Scrolls. They hid that shit. And boy, I mean, those writings are so anti-religion, it's ridiculous. It's like crazy stuff. So that of course, that's why the Catholic Church didn't let anybody see him for 50 years, you know? And they have some kind of COVID shot going on before people had him, you know? It's just,
Another reset.
yeah. So, but these guys knew shit. I mean, they could transport. Did you know they used to transport? They had the ability to just arrive suddenly in a city. I mean, it's like really cool shit that they did.
Are you
So-
talking about like individual people being able to just simply do it on their own mental power? Or are you talking about walking through, say, a lot of these like stone portals and these other various, I guess you would call them Earth-based advanced technologies?
Like they instantly appeared. Okay, so that's how they instantly appeared, and they were in one town, and they instantly appeared in the other town. So you know, I used to go to the pastor of the church. It's called the Book of Acts, and I'd say they did some really cool shit in the Book of Acts. How do we get to do that again? And I would be told, well, we don't need that anymore. And I said, well, I do. There's giants
Yeah,
in the
we
land
do.
keeping me up. I'd sure like to know this shit. And he'd say, well, we have Grace now. I said, you know, Grace, who's she? You know, it's like, what?
Oh, nice. That's a darn good response.
What, you know, what my grace that I can just endure this shit in this body that's collapsing, and I'm just supposed to like take the shit? Is that what you're saying? Is that grace? No.
Like, where's the Sumerian kings list of living thousands of years? What is this
Yeah, it's not.
age
Yeah.
we're currently in?
It's in the Old Testament too. But after Noah did his shit, you know, and the firmament comes down, I think that there was a firmament in it. Somebody hit the shit with high voltage or something, and boom, you know. But the thing is that we did. Let me explain that. We did all that shit. We already did that. We are the consciousness. We are the ones, and we did it. We just don't remember it. We need to remember that we're the stem cell. So we did that shit. And John and I did this thing where we went off to do the Atlas Shrugged. We did that. And the whole fucking planet trashed. Gulf of Mexico didn't get fixed. Fukushima blew. There is no remediation whatsoever. We know that what we do reinstills life into the pine trees that were dead on the coast. The park ranger was like flabbergasted because pine trees, once they're dead, they never grow back on that dead site. They grew back when we were there. So we knew that we were doing something. But what happened was that's another timeline. And we were in our Atlas Shrugged, and we figured out a way to get back here.
Man, that's wild. And what really blows me away is the range of these systems. I mean, you're talking about scalar effects that don't seem to have any kind of predicted limits with input power. I mean, you're getting massive affected areas of planet growth and of weather changes. It's huge areas.
So
So
I
that's
didn't get
really interesting.
the first part of what you said.
Oh, I said what's really surprising is the massive range that these machines have. Just how far they reach out and how big of a physical area, acreage-wise, is actually affected by one of these things when they're running.
What things?
Oh, well,
Right.
like with the ray gun, for example, and just the effects that you had with that. Some of those devices with the crystal batteries and the
Okay, now
the Johnny tunes. It's like they have a
Done.
wide range.
now I'm gonna talk the sneaky shit, and maybe you don't wanna record this.
Okay, I'll tell you what, it's probably a good time to stop recording anyways, and then we can talk about a few other things. So let me go ahead and end that there. So if this does get shown, thanks for tuning in. If not,
Okay.
it's in private, and I'm gonna stop it now.